Right there.
John, if we go on consent with that, would that be okay rather than speaking? Okay, fine. We'll just hold it here and see if my colleagues will go along with that. Could I ask staff, please, to read motion 4?
Hi, Richard.
Just go for it.
Agenda is the DOT report relative to the renewal of temporary PPD number 161 in CD5. And item 5 is a DOT report relative to expanding PPD number 40 to include various residential areas surrounding Melrose Avenue in CD4.
We'd like to move them.
Yeah, I move, Mr. Corrett supports strongly number 4, and I support strongly number 5.
Mr. Alarcon, 4 and 5 on consent. So moved, 4 and 5 on consent. It's unanimous by the 3 members of the committee. Make sure Mr. Corrett knows that we move forward on that. That's 4 and 5. Item number 6, Maria.
Item number 6 on the regular agenda is a Labange-Garcetti motion instructing DOT and DWP to report relative to the feasibility of implementing an option to the street construction moratorium that would permit DWP to continue infrastructure projects during moratorium periods, provided they support traffic control officers at its expense.
And I'll turn this one over to Mr. Lynch.
Thank you, Chairman Rosendahl. Throughout the city, the Department of Water Power is focused on infrastructure and trying to install infrastructure throughout. They also are compliant with all regulations. This regulation that sometimes has to detour them from the immediate job of getting things done in these big streets, in the secondary highways, and we're asking that the department work with the city engineer and the Department of Transportation to come up with a plan that would exempt them from work in the rush hour if traffic mitigation can be placed, such as traffic control officers, to deal with the work. As you may know, Mr. Rosendahl, Mr. Reyes, Mr. Alarcon, several locations in the city, 96-inch pipe is being installed. At some locations, the crews have to set down during the rush hour and can't get things done. So we're going to continue this 30 days to allow staff to work together and come back and hopefully with an action plan that will be satisfactory to all.
And with that in mind, staff, on this issue, for the record, I want to read into the record 9 questions that we'd like to have answers for item number 6. Staff, the peak hour construction moratorium applies to all streets except for local streets, correct or not? And what hours of construction does the moratorium restrict you to? Third question, and what are your normal hours of construction? 4, so what type of work is staff occupied with during moratorium hours? 5, do you have any idea of what complementing with the moratorium is costing you in terms of hours, project delays, increased costs, etc.? 6, how there is a process to apply for an exemption to the moratorium, correct? But depending on what part of the city you're working in, you may get a different interpretation of what the requirements are. Is that right? So, there could be some better collaboration with other agencies, as Mr. Labange just said, that would help smooth this process. And number 9, and the agencies involved in the process are BOE, BSS, and DOT. Is that correct? That's for the record, and we want that as part of the report back when we have this.
In 30 days. If you give me a copy, I'll give it to the department.
There you go. Done. Okay. So
I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. Okay, so we're doing great. Okay, folks, we have, and we're waiting for Mr. Parks to do a special agenda item number 1, but we will hold on that until Mr. Parks shows up. Please. He'll be here in 1 minute. Do you think so, folks? And we got to watch. We could wait 1 minute before we go into the other then, because obviously the other is why the rest of you are here, okay? While we're waiting for Mr. Parks, the minute is now maybe 40 seconds. How many are cyclists? Could you raise your hand? I'd just like to get a sense. How many are part of the equestrian stuff? How many are those on the other side of the equestrian stuff? Okay, all right, I just wanted to know what kind of energy we had in the room. I like the cowboy hat, by the way. It's a nice hat.
Councilor Rosendahl, as we wait, I just want to take a moment to thank the staff for their hard work. This has been a long time coming, putting together the bicycle plan. As we look at the process, the staff has gone beyond what was expected in terms of public hearings. They indeed had additional hearings from what I am aware of in the Northeast area. And I'm appreciative of that. And I did want to take a moment to thank from the planning department, Claire Bowen, who has been one of the true warriors in making sure we look at all the technical issues and the impacts and leveraging our opportunities in building a better city. Ken Bernstein, who's also been part of the team, and thank you for your hard work and diligence. Jordan Turner, who's also been part of this process. I want to thank Jordan for his hard work. The DOT, we've got some amazing warriors here, and Michelle Maury, who's, since I can remember in the early 90s, we've been having these discussions, mid-90s, and to see this come to fruition is truly amazing. Bikeway engineering staff, and I understand you have a new staff member that we waited a few years for, Nate Barrett. Welcome, Mr. Barrett, and I know this is one of those experiences and that we finally get to see some traction, so it's going to be great. I also want to thank the Bicycle Advisory Committee representatives who are here. Those who are on the committee, can you just raise your hand? Thank you so much for your advocacy. I know for many years we've been trying to get to a place where we can actually start seeing some change, and you've been instrumental in making that happen. So I want to thank the advisory committees. These are volunteers who dedicate a lot of hours, a lot of time and expertise in making this possible, as well as the advocates, the LA County Bicycle Coalition, who has been working very hard at many different levels in making sure we understand that for all communities, whether transit dependent, it's recreational, or just a way of life, that everyone's included in benefiting from these programs. So I just want to take a moment, Councilmember, and make sure we acknowledge the folks who, behind the scenes, make it work and put their heart and soul into this process.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and obviously, none of us could be effective in our work if we didn't have great staff, city staff, and our own staff to help us through the issues we deal with, and I appreciate your welcoming them. We're now joined by Mr. Koretz, so I have 4 members out of a 5-member committee, and Mr. Koretz wanted the privilege of just commenting on item number 4, which we passed on consent. Mr. Koretz.
Actually, I didn't want to comment. I just wanted to add on to that. I think this will be very helpful in my district. I appreciate everyone supporting it.
Great speech. We love it. Mr. Alicon and I. Okay, thank you. So now we're not waiting for Mr. Parks because the minute is up. We're going to the 1, 2, and 3 item.
There he is.
Where is he?
Right there. On your right.
There he is.
Hey, how about a chair for him? Let's give him a round of applause.
In a minute.
Out of great respect to the great councilman, we're now going into special agenda item number 1. Maria, what is that?
Item number 1 is the CAO report relative to recommendations for the use of unallocated Measure R local return funds for various transportation projects.
Okay, Mr. Parks, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment?
We have no public
Okay.
comment cards on
We-
this item.
Okay, we have the staff.
Staff over there, please.
Could you just give us an overview of where these funds came from and why we're currently evaluating them?
Okay. Angela Berman, CAO's office. At the beginning of the fiscal year, $12.6 million in the Measure, city's Measure R fund was unallocated due to various calculation errors and changes in programs. The proposed budget had set aside $9.9 million for a project. That project did receive funding from an outside source, so that funding was set up and was left unallocated. So we've gone through numerous attempts to allocate these funds. December 8th, The Transportation Committee directed my office to work with DOT to identify projects in the South LA area that may be funded through Measure R. We had approximately $8.7 million already allocated of the 12.2, or 12.6.
And this is what we call local return?
Correct. It is a portion of sales tax revenue.
And so it's not the same pot of money that we're using to fund the rail projects?
No, this is the city's local return fund. This is our money.
When we dealt with this before, what I had a concern about is that over the last several funding sources from whether it was Caltrans or MTA or Safety Lewis, we kept ignoring the south part of the city, south of the Santa Monica Freeway. And so we asked, particularly in light of the fact that the LADOT had made a couple of commitments, one to fix the, help secure and fix the Western and Exposition intersection right at Fauché School, and secondly, that they had done a study in South LA about bus stops and a variety of issues that we've never acted on. Asked that you go forward and look at south of the Santa Monica Freeway and at the time north of the strip there in the harbor, and find out what could we do to spend funds that were on eligible projects. And so this basically is what you're recommending today?
Yes, our office with DOT has identified work at 8 major intersections in South LA, and intersection improvements that could be implemented fairly quickly is about $1.8 million, and these intersection improvements would include bus shelter lighting, other crosswalk markings.
Are there other completed studies, as you've done with the South LA study, that would look into the north part of the 15th or into the 9th district on transportation issues that are as refined as the study that you've done for the 8th district?
I would have to refer to the Department of Transportation to see if they've done any specific studies in those areas.
Good afternoon, Ken Husting, LADOT. To my knowledge, there is not specific studies for those areas as detailed as the South LA.
Are there projects that have been offered up in other call for projects that would be available in the 9th district or the north part of the 15th?
Absolutely. There are several projects in both those districts.
So did you look at those across the board, or how did we evaluate what was available and what were the type of things as far as a priority in the south part of the city of LA?
Do you want to answer? Well, when it came to, are you talking, what's that? Ken Husting, LADOT. Specifically, when it comes to the call for projects, we look at the different modal categories and we determine what are the best needs or the highest needs according to the MTA criteria. If it's specifically related to the Measure R program, we were focusing on different areas where there's funded projects, where the money's being leveraged, and where there's either a shortfall or there's an opportunity for us to maximize leveraging the city dollars.
What's proposed today is what, 8-point-something million?
Yes.
Okay, and that, do we have a fairly decent coverage of the city as far as projects, and kind of go through the list and show us what areas of the city are being addressed with this 8-point-something million?
Yes. Okay. We will be able to report, well, we're using a good portion of that money across the city, different districts, and as well as on a report back through the bicycle and pedestrian, we'll be able to identify other areas across the city where projects are being done in different districts.
And that's because we've designated a certain amount of the local return money for bicycles?
Absolutely, yes.
And what was that percentage?
The percentage was 5% for bikes and 5% for peds.
Okay, so that this $2 million that you've, or bicycles, how much was allocated for bicycles?
I'm sorry.
How much was allocated for bicycles and that coverage?
The $2 million, that's for the, I'm sorry.
Is that the 2.6 million?
The 2.6 million.
Okay. And
That's
so
2.6 million over this fiscal year and last fiscal year. And last fiscal year was a half a year, so it's about 1.5 million this year.
1.5, but every year we deal with Measure R, we'll have a specific 10% for pads and bikes.
That is correct.
And so, colleagues, on this issue, again, I think it certainly is far more representative than the first time that we got this proposal, and I would recommend that if there's no other question that we move on that.
Just a question I have, Wilshire Boulevard, you have Wilshire Boulevard listed. What do you have for Wilshire Boulevard? You
We
describe-
have a $2 million contingency listed under these recommendations.
To explain what that would go for.
These funds are actually set aside for the project. I know the city is working on the project to implement a bus lane and provide some mixed flow, reconstruct mixed flow lanes. So we're working on an estimate of the project. We need to set some money aside right now.
Yeah, Wilshire is failing right now. Do you admit that? Because of its condition? And Wilshire is being looked at only east of La Cienega, is that correct, as far as the bus
The
lane?
bus-only lane, it's at the border of Beverly Hills to downtown, but frankly, I want it from the ocean to downtown.
I got it, but
And
since
we-
you don't right now, and there's such failure in the
We're
work-
going to do separate reports. There is the one segment, which is all of LA. There is the special one we've talked about that allows it to go forward quickly in your district and
Well,
others.
Mr. Koretz's district there
And at
between
the same
Fairfax and-
time, the
Mr. Reyes's
segmented
district.
west side will only be successful if the city of Santa Monica, at least from my perspective, if
got
we were
it.
to do a bus-only lane up to the border of Santa Monica, in my piece of the city, it would be worse than it already is now.
Now, the question I
So-
want to ask you, Mr. Chair, could we go do this?
Yes.
Could we have this at least be focused on between Westlake, which is the...
We totally agree
Parkview-
with you.
Parkview Avenue, and
Yes.
what would be La Cienega, San Vicente. San Vicente.
Correct.
San Vicente's the border, East San Vicente.
Exactly right.
That part of Wilshire.
Right, that's right. So
I
back
want
to...
to look Mr. Parks in the eyes, because I once had $10 million on Wilshire Boulevard, but it found its way to the Expo line, which I'm happy, because the Expo line's being built, but at the same time, we got to address Wilshire. But I want to look you in the eye, Bernard. You're crafty.
Well, he's... Yeah. Mr. Parks is looking out for his constituents who haven't had the support in the past in the context of this kinds of money from Measure R, and this is a good thing for that part of the district. So the recommendation is to adopt the CAO recommendations. Do I have a success on that among the committee?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
With that friendly amendment about...
Always
Parkview
keep an eye
Avenue.
on that Wilshire Park.
San
Yes.
Vicente.
Any other comment on that?
I just want to tell Tom, part of that money that we were talking about.
Right.
It went in to build the elephant.
Oh, no, it didn't. Don't you say that. That's
A little rumor here in the room, Billy the Elephant.
Send
Okay,
Mr. Parks back to the
do I have
district.
unanimous support on this? Going once, going twice? Yes, Mr. Koretz just said that. Mr. Alarcon, you with us on this one? Okay, unanimous by the Transportation Committee, 5 of us, to move forward with the CAO recommendations on this Measure R business, okay? Okay, fine. Great. Now we're back to the joint meeting, and let me just do a quick little opening from the transportation standpoint. Thank you, Mr. Parks. Appreciate your presence here. This is a joint meeting. The Land Use Committee and the Transportation Committee are joined at the hip, as Mr. Fisher would say, over working together as a team. And this is a team effort. And the procedure will be the staff will explain what we're doing here today in a quick presentation. We want you all to listen to that because some of your questions might be answered by that, some might not. It might trigger another question you might have. And so after they make their presentation, and if my colleagues want to ask them questions at that point, obviously they're free to do it. But then we're going to have public comment. Public comment will respond to what the staff, or whatever else you want to use in your public comment that you consider critical. Then we'll ask the staff to take notes while you're speaking and respond to some of this if it makes sense for that to be done, either to clarify something or to help explain where they got to the conclusions that they came to. And then after that, we will take whatever action we need to take. So it's very important that we hear staff's report, so we hear what we need to do. And I have to ask my co-chair here if it's okay from your perspective, because I do know some of the colleagues sitting with us right now have other commitments, if we could limit it to 1 minute per person, if
That's
it
fine,
works for you.
that's fine. I'm fine with that, to make sure we listen to everybody before we lose quorum. But I do also want to take a moment to thank Councilor Paul Krikorian for joining us on Plum Committee. As a joint committee, we wanted to make sure we address both the land use impacts of these policies as well as the transportation program and policies. As the steward of this, Councilmember Rosendahl, as chair of this committee, what I'd like to do, and perhaps we can start the formalities, is officially welcome to the Plum Committee as part of this joint meeting. So it's officially open, Plum Committee. And we do have a process where, as described by Councilor Rosendahl, we'll have a presentation from the staff. So we'd like the transportation arm of this process to give their presentation, then we'll have planning give their input. And then from there, we can move forward, and in that light, have Roberta read into the record of the items that are being covered by the Plum Committee as well. Okay, so that being said, Roberta, can you read in item number 1? And Roberto is the CLA for the Plum Committee's staff as well. Roberto?
Yes, council members. Item 1, what's before you, it's a report from the Planning Department as presented to the City Planning Commission, and it's a general plan amendment to update the city's bicycle plan.
We also have the CLA from the transportation read. Their item is the same verbiage.
Yeah, item number 2 is the DOT and Planning Department report relative to the recommendations for the 2010 Bike Plan 5-year implementation strategy. And item 3 is a Koretz-Garcetti motion instructing the Planning Department, Department of Public Works, and DOT to report on a quarterly basis relative to the 2010 Bike Plan.
Great. So that being said, we have our planning director to give his overview.
Good morning, Michael LeGrand, Director of City Planning, along with my colleague Amir Sadati, the Acting General Manager for the Department of Transportation. We'd like to both come here to emphasize the importance of this plan and the importance it has on the community, and we'd like to really thank the committee for getting together and showing the spotlight at how the City Council can really work together collaboratively on important citywide issues like this. This has been a significant undertaking for both departments, an effort that began in 2007. It involved a considerable amount of public outreach, a lot deeper than we've done before, through the Bike Advocacy Group, many neighborhood councils, and many stakeholders in the community who have an interest in this. The plan itself is an important milestone for Los Angeles as we take major steps to become a bicycle-friendly city. The plan proposes an ambitious network of 1,680 miles of designated bikeway facilities along 3 interconnected bikeway networks. But just as importantly, this plan is a broader set of initiatives. It's really to move Los Angeles away from the focus on reliance of the automobile and into multiple modes of transportation that this committee has been so eloquent in describing to the public. We'd like to get away from the thinking of just utilizing the car, but also utilizing our feet, our pedestrian access, some of the great resources we have in the city like the LA River, but also the bikeway network, and making sure that people have alternate transportation choices available to them and that they're safe, secure, and something that's attractive to the citizens of Los Angeles. This really falls in line with what the Planning Department's been working on in terms of sustainable transit communities and focusing our investment in Measure R and focusing on our advanced policy program to make sure that we capture that investment and utilize it so that when LA has the next wave of transit investment, that we have unique public places, we have multiple modes of transportation, and we have various ways to engage our transit system, whether it's biking, walking, using the automobile or our bus services. I'd like to thank Amir and his staff from LADOT for the close collaboration throughout this process, particularly Michelle Mowry, the city's bicycle coordinator, and her team in the Bikeways unit. I also want to thank our planning staff from the Citywide Policy Division, headed by Ken Bernstein, as well as Claire Bowen, Jordan Turner, and Jane Choi for all their hard work in preparing, refining, and improving this plan. We are proud to present this plan to you. It has been well vetted through the Planning Commission. They had numerous public meetings on this, heard numerous testimonies, made concessions on both sides, and really brought to you a plan today that we feel has a great amount of consensus and really has a really good balance between many of the advocacy groups who have a stake in this discussion. And we also had a subcommittee of the Planning Commission really focus on some of the details that have been raised and a lot of the controversy. And I think that's why you see today there are a lot of people here that have had their voices heard through the process. They may still have additional concerns or considerations for you, but we really do feel that the public process served its purpose in terms of vetting those issues, responding to those issues, and providing a platform for you to take an action today.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Amir Sadati, Interim General Manager, LADOT. I'd like to echo Mr. Lagon's statements, and really, as I think was mentioned, we're not joined at the hips, but as you can see, we're sitting right next to each other, and our staff are sitting right next to each other, and that's because we have a very good collaboration and cooperation, and it really took, as Michael mentioned, many years of us working together, and I know it's been a rough challenge, but I think this is a milestone for the city of Los Angeles as
But
we...
for the sake of the public, I mean, that's an important factor. How many years do you think has been committed or dedicated to this? To this moment?
To this moment, I think it really began almost 7 years ago, but really, I think the bulk of it has been in the last 5 years, really, but it's been talked about, and I think it's been challenges, but I think, as mentioned, the process has been able to bring the stakeholders, and for us to be able to really work with the stakeholders, the Bicycle Coalition, the public, and all of the different venues to understand and put together forth a vision for Los Angeles. And I think as you also have before you, with that vision comes a strategy, a 5-year implementation strategy that I think will get to the meat of it. So I would also like to thank Michael and Ken Bernstein, Claire Bowen, really all the planning staff, and also the DOT staff, Kong Hu, Michelle Maury, Paul Michigan, and all of his staff, because without the staff, we wouldn't be here today and the long hours. So I want to congratulate you, Michael, and your staff as well. The department shares the same vision as the Department of Planning and many of you in trying to reduce our dependency on automobiles as we grow, figure out smart alternatives, and be able to really be a city where we can walk and use other modes of transportation as well. I think LA is large enough, and we may be able to move traffic in some areas, but in some other areas we slow it down and we make it safer for pedestrians and bicycles. Speaking of that, the department's taken a progressive and active role in educating our engineers. We're going to be participating in Complete Streets workshops. We're going to bring folks and look at other cities around the nation that have some programs and really be able to be open-minded about those types of activities. So with that, we're very excited. We got a lot of work ahead of us, and I do want to make sure that we understand that this is a historic moment as this committee, the joint committee, and the council approves this. The next challenge will be building the 200 miles per year, and I think the staff will get into it, and we've got some good strategies, and I think our role would be, if there are challenges, to make sure that you're all aware of the challenges and that the policymakers will make policy decisions.
If we can get to item number 1, then can we have that presentation?
And I think that's what we're going to do right now, so a joint presentation.
Okay, and when they do the joint presentation, in a pre-meeting I had with staff, several issues were pointed out that they will highlight as well in their presentation. And so if you're here for some of those particular points, they will make it clear where they're coming from and how they got to that point. Michelle, come on up there, and whoever else needs to be, where's Claire? I want Claire there. Come on, let's go. We got to get moving on this. And I want you to explain what we're doing, so that people can appreciate what these issues are that we have. In the pre-meeting yesterday, I met Claire for the first time, who I understand is also a cyclist. Could you take us through, staff, the three of you, exactly what we're up to and what we're doing before anybody else makes any comment? Go for it.
Absolutely. Good afternoon.
Just one question, Mr. Chair. Highlight issues of the equestrians, too, because we have
that's part of
those
it,
people
Tom.
here. I just wanted to make
That's
sure.
right, it will.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Good afternoon, council members. Ken Bernstein. I'm principal planner overseeing the Citywide Policy Division of the Department of City Planning, and really here on behalf of both staffs to present to you the highlights of the bicycle plan that's before you. What is before you is the Citywide Bicycle Plan, which is a component of the transportation element of the general plan. And I'm sorry, with you sitting here, you don't have access to your computer screen, so we will have a PowerPoint and some images going up on the screen here. The plan has not been thoroughly updated since 1996. That 1996 plan was readopted by the council in 2002 and again in 2007. And this is a result of nearly 4 years of work. The two departments have been working on this since 2007. We've conducted widespread outreach throughout the city, held 2 sets of regional workshops, really in every corner of the city, that resulted in over 1,000 comments coming in to the city during the public comment period. We also incorporated into the public outreach the department's first ever webinars, our first ever online workshops and public hearings where we're able to actually take testimony and comments over the web. And we've continued our work with the advocacy community throughout that process, resulting in suggestions that significantly enhance this plan. So this has been a joint collaboration not only of these two departments, but also a technical advisory committee involving multiple city departments such as Public Works, Airport, Harbor, LAPD, and many others, as well as the Bicycle Advisory Committee of the city. So next slide. So who rides bicycles in Los Angeles and how often? The plan is meant to address the needs of all bicyclists throughout Los Angeles, both current bicyclists and potential bicyclists. The existing universe of bicyclists is already very large. More than 20,000 Angelenos ride bikes daily, more than 400,000 ride monthly, and nearly 1.4 million, or about 40%, of our city ride some of the time. Most of these ride recreationally, but a growing number, up to about 10%, report commuting by bicycle at least at some point of the year. The plan has as one of its hallmarks that with strong public policies, public education, and safety measures, these are numbers that can grow substantially in a city such as Los Angeles, which has favorable topography in most of the city, and of course a very favorable climate that's conducive to bicycling. The plan components, the plan is broken down into 3 components that are before you today. The plan itself, of course, with its goals and policies and programs that we'll be describing in somewhat more detail. Secondly, a technical design handbook, which may have received less attention than the plan proper, but is incredibly valuable in assisting city departments in the selection and design of bicycle facilities. And then finally, the maps showing the existing and funded bicycle facilities and the build-out of the proposed bikeway networks throughout the city. The plan articulates 3 simple, straightforward, yet very ambitious and forward-looking goals from which the rest of the plan flows. First, to increase the number and types of bicyclists who bicycle in the city. This is focusing on ways to increase bicycling among all user types, and so the plan therefore contains policies oriented to commuters, integrating transit and bicycling, other policies and programs oriented to youth and outreach and education. Secondly, to make every street in Los Angeles a safe place to ride a bicycle. And I would call out under that goal first safety. Safety is one of the key concerns of this plan, since many Angelenos are naturally reluctant to ride on very busy streets out of understandable safety concerns. Of course, the mayor himself suffered an accident in recent months that publicly underscored some of the need in the city to address safety. But in addition to that, the phrase every street, that very much flows from new state policies to address complete streets to accommodate multiple modes of transportation on streets throughout Los Angeles. And then third, to make the city of Los Angeles a bicycle-friendly community in keeping with some of these state mandates to reduce greenhouse gases, to move away, as Mr. Legrand said, from our reliance on the automobile to embrace a multimodal transportation future. The policies and programs of the plan then flow from those 3 goals, and we have 10 major objectives, which then are carried out throughout the plan into 52 policies and over 125 programs. The 10 objectives that are here cut across a wide variety of programs and policies and focus on many of what are called the E's of transportation and bicycle planning, such as, for example, equity, street access, to update major Class II roadway standards to accommodate, to include bicycle accommodations, under parking, to amend our bike parking ordinances, under encouragement to have events such as the Ciclavia that was so successful in this city last fall, under bicycle facility education to develop educational campaigns for the public about bicycle engineering treatment. And that carries through under engineering, enforcement, evaluation, environment, and many others with those 10 objectives. Next. Actually, let's go, if I could go back to the previous slide, I did want to point out, and Mr. Labange mentioned, and we know we have folks here in the audience who do want to address one of the policies, which is under 3.3, the discussion about mountain biking in city parks and trails. Just to address that up front, because we will be discussing this, I'm sure, in the discussion portion of this agenda. The Department of City Planning has sought to strike a balance on this issue of mountain biking in its recommendations. We want to make clear that nothing in this plan would open up city trails or parks, including Griffith Park or other city trails and parks, to mountain bike use. The plan does contain programs that will provide information only, information and data on best practices around the region and around the nation, will provide an inventory of local trails, will provide counts of off-road users. This is data that can inform future policy decisions by the City Council or by the Recreation and Parks Commission. You may use that data to determine whether you would want to make any changes to longstanding city policy that has prohibited mountain biking on park trails in the city, with the exception of in Mandeville Canyon Park. But throughout the City Planning Commission process, we heard from equestrian advocates and environmental advocates on this issue, some arguing that the proposed programs referencing mountain biking should be deleted from the plan altogether, and others arguing that these provisions, in fact, do not go far enough and should be beefed up, and I'm sure you'll hear testimony today.
But just to amplify that, what we are doing today is creating a context based on information and data in each city park, where if this issue were to come up, every elected official in the respective area can choose.
Exactly. It's providing baseline data
issue
and information to guide future policy decisions, but the plan does not recommend any actual changes or opening up of city parkland or city or trails to mountain bike use.
Okay, thanks.
So, to move along then to the next slide. So the Citywide Bikeway system, the centerpiece of this plan is a connected citywide bikeway system that involves 3 bikeway networks. The backbone network, which is for the users that are most comfortable on city streets. The backbone network includes over 700 miles of facilities, a neighborhood network, which is for the user that is more comfortable on local streets in less heavy traffic, and a green network that is about 139 miles on the city's bicycle paths and shared use paths. The green network includes such facilities as the LA River Bikeway and the bikeway along the beach path, as well as Bayona Creek and many others in the city. So together, this is a very ambitious network, city bikeway system meant to accommodate a wide range of users. Just as a comparison, under of the City Bicycle Plan and these networks, the 1977 plan and the 1996 plan each envision networks of over 600 miles, and you can see the breakdown of those miles on this chart here. By contrast, the current plan that's before you more than doubles that. It is an extremely ambitious plan, well beyond what the city has achieved over the last few decades. And then the technical design handbook, which I mentioned earlier, provides design guidance for bikeways and includes both standard and non-standard designs. This includes these standard designs that are long accepted by city departments, but also captures the best thinking and best practices from around the nation and around the world to give the city and the public a roadmap as to how creative strategies might get us there to implement some of the plans and programs, policies and programs in this plan. For example, it looks at the design of shared bicycle bus lanes, creative approaches such as protected bicycle lanes, and recommended designs of bicycle racks. The Technical Design Handbook is designed to be accessible, informative, and educational, but also technical to provide guidance to city departments as well. And then finally, a conclusion. The key to all of this, of course, will be implementation. The adoption of this plan is not the end of the story or an end in and of itself. It is really the beginning of a story and the first step. But as a first step, it is one that has tremendous value to the city of Los Angeles. It lays out a vision of Los Angeles as a bicycle-friendly city. It provides a set of forward-looking policies for bicycling. It defines this ambitious network that, for the first time, is meant to be built as an integrated, connected system. And we'll talk more about this under item 2. In the past, our efforts have been in many cases opportunistic, yes, but piecemeal in results without ending up as a connected, integrated system. But full implementation will require close coordination between city departments, remaining joined in the hip as we are today, which is why the statements of our general managers today are so important. It will, of course, require reviews under the California Environmental Quality Act, which is state law. In some cases, these reviews will be very straightforward when there are only minimal physical changes being proposed. In other cases where more dramatic physical changes are needed, these reviews may be more extensive. And of course, it will require funding and staffing, and we will be speaking more about this under item 2. But among the funding sources we are looking at to implement the plan will be Measure R, which we've discussed already today, Prop C, state and federal funding, Metro call for projects, the need to compete for other sources of funding as well, Transportation Development Act, TDA funding, safe routes for schools, for those parts of the neighborhood network around schools. So we'll be looking at all of that, but having a clear systematic plan in place with a linked network will help us compete successfully for those funds. And we will also need the continued dialogue with all the stakeholders that was the hallmark of the development of this plan, the leadership of the Bicycle Advisory Committee, and a new collaborative relationship being developed in this plan called the Bicycle Plan Implementation Team, whereby city staff and the bicycle community can together roll up their sleeves, sit at the table to overcome the inevitable implementation challenges that will be arising month by month, project by project, and overcome those so we can move forward and achieve the plan's ambitious goals. I just want to join the general managers in thanking our incredible staff on this. While I have the pleasure of giving the presentation, the heavy lifting has really been done by all of these folks, Claire Bowen, Jane Choi, and Jordan Turner on our staff, and Michelle Mowry and her team at LADOT, Paul, and some of Michelle's new staff members at LADOT, and we're grateful for all of their work and for the collaboration.
Thank you. And from the Department of Transportation, any else you'd like to add?
Yeah, and as Mr. just said here, Reyes, when you do this, please, some of the things we talked about that are issues that people have here in the room, I would like that to also come within this context before they get up and speak.
I just had a couple thoughts. First of all, I want to thank you, Councilmember Reyes. This all started with you. I don't know if you recall, but you introduced a motion over 6 years ago to actually get us started on this process. Excuse me. It took quite a bit of effort to get us all moving, but we're all there and we're all in the same place, and I think we have the most fabulous plan we could have ever expected. It is really a dynamic plan to move us forward. And while we're at a difficult time in the city's resources, we're actually really at a very exciting time for bicycles where we are really turning a corner and moving things forward. The department is really changing and looking at alternative modes, and it's really an opportunity to move forward with a plan that'll get us there.
Thank you. And I see Mr. Fisher in the audience. I want to thank him because I know this is all about how we create that balance between vehicle and bicycle. I always appreciate your support and how we move in that direction to create greater access for our bicycle community. But Councilmember Rosendahl wanted to see if you could share with us at this time some of the issues that you think we should be aware of that has arisen in your process in engaging the community, so that way when they do come up, we have a sense of a of a context of how these issues have arisen, and you just give us the Reader's Digest version, because I'm sure there's a lot of tension out there.
I'm known for talking too much. As was mentioned in some of the earlier comments by the general managers, we are looking at a 200-mile-plus plan to deliver facilities over the next 5 years. That plan is really going to establish the background. We've developed a bicycle plan implementation team. One of the policies within the bicycle plan that is being chaired by planning. We're bringing together everybody from the city family to advocates and members of the Bicycle Advisory Committee to prioritize those projects. The city's, no question, is going to have to make some hard decisions. We're going to have to choose to look at our roadways differently and how we use the space. And what we hope to do, we're already starting to do actually, is go out and work with the neighborhood councils and work with the business communities and say, these are our options and this is what we seek to gain through these processes.
Ms. Bowen, in terms of a land use point of view and the discussions, is there a perspective you can share with us in terms of what have been the most contentious elements of this discussion? Is there any way you can highlight those? If not, we can get into the public hearing.
Yeah, I guess certainly, and Ken spoke to it a few moments ago, certainly the issues of the equestrian trails has certainly been, we certainly know, one of the more contentious issues. I think that we are very pleased with kind of the compromise we have found here today and recognize that unfortunately, in the parks today, there's a lot of spillover bikes, even though because they're not allowed, they are already using those trails. We think that having these kind of guidelines in place now that will start to put us on the roadmap towards starting doing inventory, starting to do an analysis of the kind of facilities that are out there today, hopefully in the future will lead to reduced conflicts. And because once you start to identify places for those mountain bikes to actually go, you'll start to actually reduce the amount of conflicts you might have, on the trails. We know recently, also on another issue, we've started to hear a little bit about interest in putting a path along the beach, and I think that I prefer to hear some of the comments from the public first before we go any further into discussing that issue.
Thank you. And any other comments from my colleagues on any of the material before us? Otherwise, we can get into public
I'm just
comment.
happy to support Mr. Reyes 6 years ago. I was happy when I worked for John Farrar to get the River Bikeway going, which now Mr. Reyes, you and Mr. Garcetti has it going. I think those backbones are so important. So I look forward to the public comment, and especially we could resolve issues related to the equestrians, which, what was that, Animal Farm, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, or whatever?
How about 2 wheels? Councilor Kurtz.
Just a brief comment. I got involved in a city council race in the 1970s when I was at UCLA, partly with the hope that we'd be able to create a bicycle path system and bike lanes and all the things that really never came about. And at that time, I and others were told that it was just about impossible to do. And it's really remarkable for me 30 plus years later to see that we're actually finding a way to implement this, and we'll have a real system in a relatively short period of time. Too late for me as a UCLA student. Not sure it'll even catch my daughter, who's in her second year there. But for students in the future in that area, I think this will be wonderful, and this will be, I think, a huge step forward for cyclists all over the city. And particularly for me as a not adventurous cyclist and someone who's not capable enough to drive major city streets on my own without feeling like I'm going to get picked off by a car. These kinds of facilities will enable me to get back on my bicycle and get to many more places than I would have otherwise.
Never give up, Councilmember. 30 years later. Okay, we can start with the public comment period, and I'd like to call up Mr. Zachary Samuels. You come up, please give us your name, your address, and if people before you have already spoken and stated what you wanted to say, it's okay to state that you agree with the previous speaker and give us anything new or different, that we're not hearing the same thing over and over again. But welcome to City Hall. Thank you. You got 1 minute. You got the clock right in front of you.
My name is Zachary Samuels. I live on Northvale Road, and I want to take exception with comments that were made about all this public outreach, public meetings, work with stakeholders, contact with neighborhood councils. The bike path is supposed to go right through my backyard, and in over 2 years we've had no contact with anybody from the city with regard to what they're going to do with regard to that. It's supposed to go right along the right-of-way that the Expo Line 2 is, and we have had no contact. And what I'm asking that the Bike Committee do is not only deal with the stakeholders and the bicyclists, but with those people whose land is going to be taken and where the bike path is going through to see what their needs are. I think proper environmental reports have to be done, and I think anytime something is published, we need to be contacted, we need to put on notice, and we feel that the planning committees have to contact us and deal with the specifics as how they affect us, and we don't believe that's been done. Thank you.
Mr. Simon, give us your address to make sure. Your address?
Oh, 10384 Northvale Road.
Okay, and there is just have to respond to one assertion. Does this plan take away anyone's property?
Mr. Sam, hello? There you go. Mr. Salmon is actually referring to an ongoing project that we're working on with the Expo Light Rail project. We have future funding to establish a bicycle path through the Cheviot Hills area as a part of this, the Expo Light Rail project and bike path project. The funding on that project is actually 2 years out. We will not be beginning the public process on that until the funding becomes available. Nonetheless, the LA Bicycle Coalition did host a meeting between the two groups to talk about the area, and the area he's specifically talking about is a sewer right-of-way, sewer easement that the city
But
currently
the bottom
has.
line is, we're not taking any land as a result of
We
this
are not taking any
action.
land, and this is not specifically called for within this plan.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Simons.
Thank you.
The question was, does the bicycle plan take any private property?
No, it does not.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to make sure that was clear. Thank you, Councilman. Allison Manor? Allison Manos, LACBC? Yes.
Hi, sorry about that. It's nice to see you all again, and I just wanted to speak briefly in strong support of the bike plan. You all of the council before us and DOT and planning have worked really hard with the bicycle advocacy community, and after lots of sweat and tears, I think the plan has really come together in prioritizing low-income neighborhoods, safe routes to school plans, and the mountain bike feasibility study. So I urge you to pass it as it is today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your advocacy. Colleagues, with their support, we were able to give out lights and other safety helmets to a whole range of riders around MacArthur Park with their hard efforts. I want to thank them publicly for that. We have Alexis, I believe it's Laute.
My handwriting's bad.
I'm sorry, I'll try my best.
Alexis Lance, Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition. Thank you all for your time today. The Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition is here today to support this bike plan and the efforts of city planning and DOT and their hard work on this. This plan is a tremendous step forward, as all of you have acknowledged, for making Los Angeles streets safer for people of all ages to bicycle to get to work, school, play, and shop. We urge you to approve this plan and move it forward so we can begin working on implementation together. Thank you for your time.
Okay, one more speaker, then Councilman Rosenthal has another set of speakers, and Dale Gibson.
All right, cowboy.
Good afternoon, Councilman, and yes, I wear the hat all the time.
Great hat.
Thank you. My name is Dale Gibson. I'm the new president of the Los Angeles Equine Advisory Committee. The bike plan for transportation is supported by the Equine Advisory Committee, except the trail and park issue. Sections 3 and 4, which may lead to opening city trails and to mountain bikers. It's a transportation issue, not a recreation issue. If the plan does not allow for mountain bike use in those sections, then maybe those sections can be deleted. All over the state of California and nationally as well, mountain bike access to traditional trails is being rescinded as awareness grows to the environmental damage and widespread user conflict issues. In Boulder, Colorado, for instance, headquarters of IMBA, where mountain bikes have had free access to their trails for years, the council staff recently recommended moving mountain bikes from their local trails due to user conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
What's your horse's name?
Which one? I've got 3.
He's got 3 horses. Okay, I'd like Jay Slater to come on up, Glenn Bailey to come up, Ken Strumpel to come up, and Christopher McCann. And Jay, when you come up here, you can speak about what you're doing and how you feel about it. And if you go over a minute, it's okay at this point because you're the chair of this committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I really appreciate the opportunity. And I want to thank Councilman Reyes first for your recognition of the BAC. My name is Jay Slater. I am a resident of Beverly Glen in District 5. I am recently elected as chairman of the BAC, the Los Angeles Bicycle Advisory Committee. Our committee began at the will of Mayor Bradley more than 35 years ago, and for most of those 35 years was headed by Alex Baum. Alex has probably done more for cycling than any human being that this city is aware of. Our most recent chairman, Glenn Bailey, has spent countless hours working within the government, within city government, to keep moving forward as a vital part of transportation that bicycles represent. As I assume the chairmanship of the committee, I wanted to just take a couple of minutes of your time and point out a few important points, mostly about the Bicycle Advisory Committee. The committee is made up of 19 members. 4 of the members are appointed by the mayor. The other 15 members represent each of the 15 council districts in the city. These members are appointed by you, by all of those of you present and all of the other members of the council. They are your representatives to the Bicycle Advisory Committee. They live and they work in those communities where you appoint them, and they know more people and work more closely with their communities than anybody else. They attend homeowners meetings, they attend community council meetings where they exist. They are instrumental in getting feedback from the community and knowing what their interests and needs are and on all kinds of transportation issues, not just cycling. But most important, they are advocates who can deliver a message and influence opinion in their districts. We are asking each council office to use those people, to use your representatives, to be in constant contact and working relationships with them so that they can perform in their communities and make this plan a reality. The Bicycle Advisory Committee strongly supports the approval of the 2010 bicycle plan. The members of the BAC have been involved for more than the last year, working with the Department of Transportation and the Planning Department on the design of the plan and the way in which it will impact our city. We have attended or held multiple meetings to discuss the planned inclusion of everything from specific routes for bike lanes, bike paths, bike routes, and other facilities, as well as the way that the plan will be implemented. Of vital importance is that this plan must not be a rerun of the 1996 plan. It had great intentions, but only a very, very small portion of that plan was ever implemented. We understand that there are many obstacles to its implementation, not the least of which are budgeting issues. However, now we have a chance to get a new start and for the benefit of the city of Los Angeles by making this plan a reality, and by doing so, improving the health and well-being of our community. This is a large and comprehensive plan, as was pointed out. In our view, the key to success is by picking those projects with the highest likelihood of being completed and focus our attention on those projects and seeing them through to completion. The mayor has indicated his high level of interest in cycling as a viable part of the improvement of transportation in the community. With his support and the support of the City Council, the Department of Transportation, the Planning Department, and aided by the Bicycle Advisory Council and other interested organizations, it's time to take this plan to reality and make the city of Los Angeles a model for other cities to follow in transportation planning. And I thank you for your time, and I'll submit my comments to the Secretary.
And, Mr. Chairs, Jay, the most important thing you said is Alex Baum. From Mr. Bradley to Mr. Reardon to Mr. Hahn to Mr. Viragosa. He's in caring for his wife, I know, who's ill. Let's give Alex Baum a big hand for all his work. He's a great Angelino, we all know.
Thank you. I will pass that on to him as I speak to him almost daily.
Tell him we all said hello.
Thank you, Jay, for your leadership, and I totally agree. We got to move forward quicker than we've ever done before, and I think we're positioning ourselves to do that. Glenn Bailey, who has been the chair of the coalition and has provided leadership the last couple of years. Glenn.
Thank you. For the record, Bicycle Advisory Committee for the City of LA. Immediate past chair. Name is Glenn Bailey. I do reside in the San Fernando Valley, but during the past year, it was my pleasure to go to many parts and corners of this city on the east side, the west side, Hollywood, downtown, South Central, sometimes on bicycle. So in conjunction mainly with this process, so it was very good. I want to stress a few things. First of all, I agree with everything that Jay said regarding the Bicycle Advisory Committee and its role. I hope that this committee and committees and the full City Council will turn regularly to the Bicycle Advisory Committee, to turn to the staff of each of the departments when they come before you and ask, did you consult with the Bicycle Advisory Committee? Because unfortunately, that has not been the case in the past. We need to do a better job of that. Same question with regards to neighborhood councils. These projects are very local based. We need to make sure that the neighborhood councils are engaged in the process. And if I may take a point of personal privilege, since I'm from the Valley, and I don't know if Council Member Krikorian can hear, there is this project I'd like to have included. It's Burbank Boulevard, from Van Nuys Boulevard east to Lankershim. It's a wide major street. It abuts Valley College, and it will be a complement to our existing network. So Burbank Boulevard, Van Nuys to Lankershim. I'd like it added on for bike lanes.
Is this for item 3 as well, so you're finishing your time, or do you want to come back for item 3?
I'll come back, thanks.
Come back for that. Kent Strumpel, who has been my representative from the 11th District for a long time. How long have you been there in that role?
Since you were elected.
Yeah, okay, great. All right, you're up.
Kent Strumpel, City of LA Bicycle Advisory Committee, Chair of the Planning Committee. And I just want to say how delighted I am that a strong, ambitious bicycle plan is finally coming before these committees. I know it's been the result of a lot of hard work of many individuals, including our Bicycle Advisory Committee, and they've asked me to just present 4 matters that we want to make sure get included. One of them I've already spoken to Claire about, or communicated her regarding assuring that any bikeways that would be impacted by other types of projects, bikeways that are designated in the plan that might be impacted by other types of projects, are subject to a hearing before your committee so that it can be reviewed before it's precluded. Also, that the BAC needs to be assured that they are part of the a designated member on the bike plan implementation team, as well as the network task force, Bikeway Network Task Force. I know we are tacitly included, but we'd like it to be formally included. And finally, regarding pavement management.
How do we do that, formally include you? Staff? How do we do that? Because obviously I want them part of it.
We would, at the end of this discussion, we would just basically recommend the technical addition to the plan.
That would be okay?
On the B-Pit, it's really they're welcome now anyway. There's nothing in the description of the program that excludes the BAC from being part of it. We can certainly add them and say they're certainly a welcome member. They already are in the way it's written.
I want you to make sure you're part of that process.
Yeah.
So does that resolve that now?
Well, if it's stated in writing and we have the level of inclusion that makes sure that we're properly noticed, that we get all the background materials in a timely fashion,
What we could do is, I'm sorry, what we could do is have language proposed and have it reviewed by us. By the time it gets to council, that should be in writing. So what you're suggesting, and we just heard from staff, it's possible we can put that in writing within the report, and then we can make that happen.
Yeah, as Mr. Alicant said, so moved. I want it in the report, and I want it in writing, and I want you to feel comfortable you're 100% in participation. Okay, staff, make sure that's done. Thank you. Then we have Jim Kennedy and Christopher, or Christopher first, I'm sorry. And then Jim Kennedy, you're 1 and 2, so you can do both of them if you like, or separately. Go ahead. Chris.
I have pictures as well, so for who can take it from me and give it to you guys?
Yeah, great. Okay.
Here, thanks. So I'm generally...
Hold this clock for a second while he did that. Start that minute up again, please. Thank you.
As Bill knows, I'm not a great public speaker, but...
Go for it.
I wanted to read this and then answer questions, but briefly, I generally support the bike plan, but I had a input which I think would make it a little better in our neighborhood. Please upgrade the Mar Vista 0066 portion of the Washington Place from bicycle-friendly street, Class 3, to bicycle lane, Class 2. Work and facilitate with Culver City to continue their bike lane, Class 2, on Washington Place at Albright, see the picture, westward through LA to Washington Boulevard in Culver City, and continuing on to Washington Boulevard into LA again at approximately Lincoln Boulevard. Upgrade the Washington Boulevard portion from approximately Lincoln Boulevard to west of Abbott Kinney at Mildred Ave to bike lane Class 2, where it can rejoin to the existing bike lane Class 2 west to Oceanfront Walk. And then, if possible, make the bike lanes Class 2 on Washington Boulevard, Washington Place, and Venice Boulevard in Venice and Mar Vista, part of the green network.
Are we taking notes on that? Could you repeat that again?
I'll give them, I have copies for them.
Yeah, it's obvious, makes a lot of sense for what you just put on there, Chris.
We happen to live on the border of Culver City, and the only other solution would be to take back Culver City and integrate it into the Los Angeles again.
Yeah, we should do that in Santa Monica as well. Okay, Jim Kennedy.
Before my time starts, I passed out maps of the area that I was going to talk about. Claire Bowen mentioned that I would be speaking about the beach mile.
There you go.
Yes, thank you. So if you can have that in front of you. Two separate.
Two separate, are they competing?
No, it's a two separate issue. My time's running out.
That's okay.
Okay.
No, that was my...
Okay. Thank you, council member. My name is Jim Kennedy. I am a resident of the beach area, and so I bike these bike paths all the time. I would like to thank the council members for allowing me to propose the final project solution for the Marvin Browdy bike path, the one that goes from Malibu down to Palos Verdes. It's over 20 miles. There's one glaring gap in it. It's this 1 mile. Now, that historical context alone should have had it included in this master plan by the staff and the consultants that you've hired. Most of the segments in this master plan were put in by staff and consultants. So the reason why this wasn't included is beyond me. This actually was in the master plan for a while. In 1973, actually, Pat Russell tried to get the project implemented. So did Ruth Galanter. Just to sum up, this has been publicly vetted more than any other project in the city. It needs to be in there. I tried to put it in there during the public process. I drew in the maps. I talked to staff. They told me one reason after another that had nothing to do with what the master plan is about environmental issues, funding issues. It's an issue that can be put in there so that when the county takes up the master plan, because there's a dual jurisdiction issue there that they have to take up, and they want to take up, but they can't. This is just the beginning of the process. So if you want a public vetting process, you have to put it in now. It was taken out in 2003 under Cindy Miskowski's watch by the local residents as a way to silence this issue, and that's not a public vetting process. So I appreciate if we could take up this issue now, and maybe a motion to consider this as amending the master plan. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Could I ask at this point, before Mr. Thompson speaks, if staff could respond to what Mr. Kennedy was just talking about?
I can't speak to the past in terms of how many times this was brought up, and I apologize because I was not involved in the plan earlier. This particular segment was first brought to our attention just before the Planning Commission hearing, and we certainly felt that, because that was the first time we were hearing about it, that it was inappropriate for us to recommend that it be added, and we suggested at the Planning Commission that it would be up to the council offices to determine whether this would be an appropriate segment to add on or not. We don't have a position on it, either pro or against, but I can certainly point out some specific statistics, on this in terms of whether it would actually be beneficial. I think one of our concerns is it's about a 1.1.2 mile segment that doesn't really connect anywhere. I mean, if there was a bridge going over the waterway, the causeway, it would actually be then very, very beneficial. Actually, Jordan, do you want to pull up the slide we did of?
You make a good point, planner.
Okay.
Right.
So we put a slide together, and I apologize, it's a lot of different colors, but I'm going to walk you through it. So the blue dotted line on the very far left there is the segment that Jim is talking about that he'd like to add. if you can see there's a little piece over the waterway, and if that actually existed, where you could actually then go directly from there to the path going down the beach, it would be a tremendous asset, and that's certainly something we would very, very much support. But even if you don't do that, I mean, there are benefits, and then if you did go down that segment, then you could connect to then that red, is this going to go that far? So if you could then connect to this red dotted line, I understand from Jim that there's interest from the county, I guess, of doing this loop. So you could do a loop. So it would be about a 3-mile kind of segment that you could come down here, then go up here, and then connect to the county bicycle plan. So that's actually a very positive thing. One of the reasons that I think the community initially was interested in doing this was that right now, when you come down the bike path, in order to be able to join up the bike path that's right here, bicyclists have to go down Washington Boulevard, and that's how most of them get there. Unfortunately, because you're on a path here, which includes riders like children and people who are not necessarily comfortable on the streets, having Washington Boulevard be the kind of the connecting point, it oftentimes discourages those less comfortable riders from kind of making that connection between this path and this path. And oftentimes people come here and then turn around. Doing this path, unfortunately, though, doesn't really get to the heart of the solution, because basically if somebody's not comfortable going here, you're now forcing them into a 3-mile kind of detour, which would be very expensive to loop back over to here. So one suggestion we've been starting to think about is, could we improve this kind of 0.82-mile section of Washington to make it more user-friendly for, again, that wide variety of bicyclists? Could we do perhaps even a pilot protected bicycle lane? And would that be more kind of cost-effective? That doesn't, encourage people to go down this way, but it would, I think, help with the solution in terms of closing this gap and making it a more connected system for this bicycle path.
With that comment, are we making it more friendly, Washington Boulevard and the others, so it is a safe route for people doing it?
That would be the suggestion, yes.
We would need to do some pre-engineering to take a look at it, but as Claire mentioned, we could look at a protected bicycle lane out there and a number of other situations. At the very least, we can start to look at squeezing down the travel lanes and making the bicycle lanes wider, which would create a little bit of buffer. But we need to get out and take a look at it, but it certainly is going to be a much more cost-effective solution.
Well, Mr. Kennedy mentions that if we put an amendment in to do something, would that slow down the plan that we're presently got before us moving forward? What impact would that have?
Well, the concern is that there was mention that this had been in the plan and was taken out of the plan. Our understanding of the history of this is that this was taken out of the plan due to considerable public concern in past years about this proposal, and this was not something that was vetted extensively with the community, because this was not carried forward in the plan's proposals getting to this point. So it does have the risk of kind of slowing down the completion of this process, and I think our preference would be obviously to continue to do some of the investigative work that Claire just mentioned, to look at options, what is the most cost-effective and most engineering effective solution to solve the problem that's been articulated here. But because this was not vetted with the neighborhood councils of the area, the homeowners on the peninsula and others, there's concern about putting it forward at the 11th hour.
Okay, Mr. Kennedy.
It's been vetted through the neighborhood councils. They support it as a no-brainer. There's no bridge option. It's not an issue. The county would like to see that built so that they can incorporate it. It's not an either-or in the master plan. The master plan is about collecting a network. It's not about saying this mile is better than that mile. Both can be in there. It's not about what the project implementation limitations or benefits are. It's about putting it in there so you can start the process. There's so many options that you want to put in the master plan. This is not where you want to kill it.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, of course.
Mr. Bernstein, the bridge that they presently cross, or Ms. Mallory, how high is the bridge from the water base that they cross now?
There is no bridge.
There is no bridge over the channel.
Any part of that channel, so
No,
they go all the way out towards Jefferson.
Right, and that's the issue. You have to ride, if the
Right, I got it,
slide
I
goes
got
back
it.
up, Jordan, you have to ride all the way around. You leave the city at Washington.
So they're not even
Boulevard,
talking about
leave the
putting a bridge over the marina?
No, there's no need to.
I got it. Well, I think because there's no money for bridges, I think all the best of all worlds, it may sound great, but I don't know if this makes total sense based on the limited dollar and how much work you have to do. So I'll certainly look for the advice of the councilman of the district, and the input for the neighborhood, but now I can't support it as much as I'd love to ride all the way down the beach.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Could we have Mr. Thompson come up next speaker? Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Roosevelt.
Thank you, Mr. Labange.
Howdy, good to be here today. My name is Alex Thompson. I'm Mar Vista Community Council, president of Bikeside LA, and co-founder of Bike Rave. This is a great plan. I mean, this is the kind of plan that other cities that are way ahead of us on bikes should be envious of. We have a better plan, and if we execute it, we'll have a more bikeable city than Chicago and New York City. And those are our competitors. But I think now that we're moving into implementation, we need to look at bringing in the kind of headstrong leadership that'll get this thing done. I have three things I want to mention related to the plan. One, with the equestrians mountain bike issue, I really think it's politically a good idea to come up with a compromise here. We don't want a secret lawsuit on our hands, and this is really an issue of recreation, which belongs in a recreation plan. This is an element of the transportation plan, so this is sort of doesn't belong here. Bill, I think you got to look at putting Sepulveda into your priorities. It's in the plan, but it's being deprioritized. Right now, it should be jumped up in priorities.
On that, hold this clock. Can we take Sepulveda and bring it into a more, as Mr.
Higher
Thompson
priority.
is saying, priority?
What is it? What do we have?
Sepulveda is a big street. A lot of people use it.
What's the question?
If we could pull it up priority.
Well, isn't that what the BPIT's doing?
Okay, then,
I mean, right now, the Sepulveda is it's on the 200 miles. We're saying it's a street we want to focus on in the next 5 years. It's an important connector. It's going to be a difficult street. I think what Alex is alluding to is that it's not part of our kind of top 60 projects we want to focus on immediately. We know it's going to be a really difficult one. And it's an initiative, again, that's a good example of where the BPIT will be the role, where we'll bring together the group to decide where it should move up in priority and how we'll look at moving it forward.
okay, I'd like you to consider what he said on that second point, Sepulveda, because I can tell you on another subject, a DWP subject, we're going to be doing potentially something on Sepulveda, and I'd like to tie it together, which would be sooner rather than later. So up it in the priority scheme.
Well, that's a good example of when we have that kind of information, then the
Right.
BPIT goes, yeah, that does make sense, we can certainly bring that up.
Okay.
And this is actually an item we can discuss further when we do the next item on the 5-year, because that's where
Very
it's more
good. And Mr.
appropriate.
Thompson has one more point, but Mr. Koretz wants to speak.
And I also don't know where the planning for the expo fits in, because there's possible widenings of Sepulveda, possibly not. Those are still open questions. So I don't know how that fits in with the timing of placement of our bike lanes.
Expo Phase 2 is primarily a bicycle path with a few exceptions where we actually divert onto National Boulevard, and we're doing a little bit of widening to include bicycle lanes. At that point, the Expo rail is above grade, and we can't go above grade with them. Almost everything else is planned for. We have worked on them extensively with the Expo 2 folks on an alignment for the bicycle path. We've also worked with the cities of Culver City on the east end and the city of Santa Monica on the west end. We think we're okay, but we're moving forward with the Expo Authority, and they're in contract now with a new designer.
Yeah, and I was mostly referring to the fact that it has, the Sepulveda crossing hasn't really been finalized, so we don't know whether it's going to be at grade and widening the street or above grade, which is considerably more appropriate, but it's not a sure thing. So we obviously want to take into account the fact that it could go either of those ways.
Yeah, and in fact, as the other side of Sepulveda, my district and Mr. Koretz and the other, that's another reason why I want to put it in as a priority, because I'm going to make this public comment. If we will not do it at grade, if we try, it'll be over my dead body. That's insane. So I'm looking forward it to be done differently, and that's one of the pressures that Mr. Koretz and I will be putting on. We're on the Construction Authority once they finish with Phase 1 of that. Your third point, please.
Yeah, and I am on the BPIT, and I think this should be jumped into the top 10, that it's not in right now. The bike path extension that's being discussed, the Venice bike path extension, can we see the slide again? Is there a way to get that slide up?
Yeah, can we put that slide up? There it is.
I know that people are saying it doesn't connect to anything, but I wonder if anybody knows what's immediately north of Washington Boulevard. The Venice Beach Oceanfront Walk is immediately north of that, and that is one of the biggest tourist attractions in the city. It's where everybody from the city goes to the beach. What this does is it allows pedestrians, because pedestrians will be allowed to use the path, and cyclists access to the beach to the south, which currently they've got to wade through a desert of sand to get to. So you'll find when the beach is very crowded, that's where you go if you want to be by yourself. But what that means is that people aren't getting full use of that beach. We're not asking, no one's asking for this to be built at an exorbitant cost right now and run it right down those people's backyards. What we're talking about is putting it into the bike plan so that it can be considered. That's it. So that we can have this very robust discussion that's been had here today in public another time with just that on the agenda. That's what we're asking for.
Thank you very much for that, Mr.
Thanks.
Thompson.
Okay, we have a few more cards on number 1. We have John, I believe it's Nahas or Nathas. It's hard to, I'm trying to read. I apologize for the last name. I couldn't read it. Okay. We have John Rizzo as well. Then we'll have Melanie Cotto and Mary Kaufman. So please, sir, give us your name and address.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is John Nahas. I'm a longtime Angelino, and I have to say this is my first visit to this hall, and it's quite beautiful. And I've come here today because of history. This Venice Beach bike path needs to be done. We have a lot of people that come around to the beach area, and Angelinos from all over, and they visit this 22-mile bike path, but there's one huge flaw. In the middle of it, it goes into it goes onto Washington Boulevard. And families do not want to put their kids onto Washington Boulevard where heavy traffic continues to pound. And so we're really losing a beautiful opportunity here by not having this in the bike plan. By allowing that extra 1.2 miles, it's actually a little bit longer than that, you give families that much more access. You have access to the beach. There are so many benefits on this, and it just doesn't make sense not to complete it. So, not only that, but the county has ample parking opportunities, so we can bring more families, we can have more tourism, we can have a lot more people have access to that 22 miles, and it also allows people to get into bicycling.
Thank you,
This
sir.
is a perfect
Thank you very
opportunity.
much. Thank you very much. Mr. Rizzo? Please, sir.
John Rizzo, President of the Marina Del Rey Tenants Association. For 35 years, I've been trying to keep the marina open to the public. The county is privatizing a public marina and excluding the public by raising prices illegally. It's all public land. It's supposed to have price control, putting in apartment buildings that don't really belong on public land that the citizens paid for recreation. And you're doing the same thing with this beach. You're privatizing it so certain residents can enjoy the beach. I don't ride a bicycle, but I've walked on there many times and looked at that beautiful beach. It's a jewel, and you're privatizing it by not putting it into this plan. Put it into this plan. It's not going to be something that's going to be let the neighbors complain. The neighborhood council voted 13-0 to do it, and so.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Melanie Cotto, then Mary Kaufman.
Hi, my name is Mary Kaufman. I'm an elected stakeholder with Chatsworth Neighborhood Council. I'm the chairperson for the Equestrian Committee for that council. In October, the Equestrian Committee had a meeting, and we invited Glenn Bailey to come and address us pertaining to the use of mountain bikes on the city trails. Mr. Bailey stated at that time that he agreed with it in purpose that the mountain bikes should not have access to the city trails, that it is an overall safety hazard. It's not just an equestrian issue, it's a public safety issue. You have kids out there hiking, you have mothers pushing strollers, and cyclists, when they come down, don't see the trail in front of them, and it can cause for some very serious accidents to happen. So we ask that you please take that portion out. As much as they say it's not really relevant, if it's not relevant, then take it out of the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Melanie Cotto?
Hello, thank you. I'm a member of the Los Angeles Equine Advisory Committee, and I'm here to echo what the other members have already said. We support the bicycle master plan. We think it's a good thing. We oppose any wording that addresses mountain bikes in our city parks. We believe it doesn't belong in a transportation plan. Mountain biking is a purely recreational activity. Also, why approve a study and spend the money if 2 years ago, in 2009, Recreation and Parks already did a study, and they found no evidence of a need to open our parks to mountain biking. And thank you very much. That's my issue.
Thank you for your hard work.
Recreation and Parks Commission oversees parklands. Do their rules supersede the rules of city planning on this issue?
City Attorney here?
Your city attorney, always here. Just something to look at, just that's a point. Yeah, research it. Thank you.
Okay, it'll be researched.
Council would have the final authority.
So that concludes the public comment for item number 1? Yeah, I have cards for items 2 and 3. Is this for item number 1? Okay.
Item number 1, if you have it for both, you can come for item number 1, if you have it for both. So we can close off item number 1.
Hello, thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Lynn Brown. I am the National Trail Coordinator for Equestrian Trails Incorporated, which is an organization of over 4,000 members. I'm also a member of the Coalition for Safe Trails, which is a panoply of trail users, including walkers, runners, hikers, dog walkers, mommy stroller groups, and everybody else who uses the trail. If the bike plan isn't supporting mountain bikes on trails, then why continue studies which appear for no other purpose than to put mountain bikes on trails? In 2009, the City Parks Needs Assessment Study, the American Sports Council has categorized mountain biking as an adrenaline-based extreme sport that, according to their statistics, is currently in steady decline in popularity. From a management decision to even consider allowing bikes on trails that were not designed for them would be to open the city up for liability. Illegal riders are already poaching on city trails. As long as they are illegal, the city is protected. I'm going to run on just a little bit.
We need you to conclude, though. Please finish.
If you're coming back for a second minute.
Okay, well, I'll finish it up then. Let me finish one sentence, okay? I'll finish this paragraph. As long as they're illegal, the city's protected from liability. Once the city acquiesces to the demand to permit this use, then they become legally culpable.
Thank you very much, ma'am. You have one more person for item number 1. You submitted a card?
Yes.
Okay, give us your name and address.
Do you say my name before? I
Yeah.
didn't hear you. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
Please.
my name is Carmen, and I'm living in Encino. And, okay, I just want to say, please pass these projects because it's very good for the kids, for us too. We're getting old, and we need to do exercise. I mean, all the people, we need to do exercise, not just driving all the time. Please do it. And then my son said, Mommy, I would like you to go and speak out over there because I really want you to do that because all my friends wants to go to Los Angeles in bicycles and see every single building and magic all this stuff. And he even say, Mommy, I hope they do it because we don't want any smoke over here in California. We have a lot of smoke. Please do it for them because they're the future. We are getting old and we're not going to be here when they're here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that closes public hearing for item number 1. Any questions for the staff colleagues on item number 1? Any issues? Yes, Councilmember Alarcon.
Yeah, I have 2 questions, 2 prominent questions. I happen to agree that we should include the beachfront area as proposed in this, or the map that was up there. Number 1, I think the beaches are for everybody, and I believe the marina is for everybody, not just the people who purchase or have the ability to purchase properties. Otherwise, they would be able to buy the beach. We're keeping the beaches public for a reason, because they're the public's beaches. But we have a responsibility, I believe, to provide access. And if we are not providing access, I believe we're doing a great injustice to the public. So I would like the record to reflect that I oppose or I support the inclusion of the connector from Washington to the Marina entry point, down via Marina, and work with the county, would encourage us to work with the county to build a bikeway all around the marina. In fact, as I travel, most of the marinas I've seen have bikeways around them, and I'm just curious why we've never done that. It would be a beautiful enhancement to our bike path system. But I don't think we have the votes, so I'm just going to ask that we incorporate my position on that in the record. Secondly, I'm concerned about the challenges of the equestrians versus mountain biking community, and where exactly are the conflicts going to occur? I mean, we haven't had a specific presentation on where those and how those conflicts could occur, but it's a serious concern. And where I have, in some of my communities in my district, I have more horses than bikes, and I want to know what challenges I would be faced with.
So a question was raised by Councilman Alacon. He wanted to know more or less where are the conflicts going to occur based on the tension between the folks who want to ride their horses versus folks who want to ride their bikes.
And I would like to also get an answer to the question, if this is a transportation plan, why are we inserting a recreational use? That doesn't make sense to me.
Okay. It's a bicycle plan, and it's a plan that's intended for all types of users. I mean, we're trying to raise or provide opportunities for riders from 8 to 80, regardless of the type of bicycle they're riding. There are even people who ride through the mountains for transportation as well. I mean, because we have very limited access through the mountains for bicycles. I mean, you're either on Sepulveda Boulevard or you're on Cahuenga, and so there are ways you can be able to come through parks and make it a safer trail. So you're right, most of the time it probably is for recreation, but it also could be for transportation, and this is kind of the one time we're looking at bicycles, so it seems like it is an appropriate place. I also think that what we're hearing is there are conflicts today happening between bicyclists and equestrians because we have not provided mountain bicyclists with appropriate facilities. Unfortunately, striking any language that allows us to move forward and do research and at least analyze what are the kinds of standards that are being used throughout this country, where you might have, if it's a utility road that's 20 foot wide, could that be an appropriate place to have bikes as well as equestrians? Or maybe we might find there's trails out there that don't intersect with equestrian trails that could be solely for the use of mountain bicyclists. We don't know this until we've studied it, but studying it and allowing ourselves to identify those facilities, identify what would be the appropriate criteria for either mountain bicycle trails alone or mountain trails that are shared trails. Having all that information will allow us then to put a plan together where we could identify the appropriate facilities that could be multi-purpose trails, or that could be sole equestrian or sole mountain bike. This allows us to do this, and I think also then by having kind of a plan where you can move forward, you're going to reduce the kind of conflicts that we're having out there today.
Okay, I'm not going to oppose moving forward with studying it. I just want to express again for the record that I have deep reservations about mixing
bicycles
and horses on off-road trails. I mean, anybody who's ever seen a startled horse with a rider on it, particularly if it's a little kid, should be terrified of that. And in my district, I have many areas where people are severely injured from horses that are startled for a variety of reasons. And if we do build a plan, then we have to segregate these two uses in some way. I mean, there's no way they should be side by side. A bicyclist is just in just as much danger riding next to a horse as the horse rider is, or the equestrian is, riding next to a bicycle. And I just, for the life of me, I can't understand. So what I'd like to do is insert language that ensures that the study will consider the safety issues related to potential conflicts of bikes and horses on the same trails.
I think that's very good, and I think frankly, that's what we're talking about as part of that study, but that's a good point to emphasize.
Councilman, I think we would point out there is such language under policy 3.3.6A, which is on page 103 of the plan, which reads mountain trail conflict resolution analysis, examine other jurisdictions to understand how they accommodate mountain bicycling and the extent to which conflicts in use, particularly with regard to concerns about safety, have been realized and addressed. So that language about safety is in the plan.
I appreciate that, but I do want to emphasize that I'm skeptical that these two uses can be 100% safe.
And I was just going to reiterate that there's nothing in the plan that suggests that the solution would be a shared trail. After doing the studies and identifying the kind of trails we have out there today, the solution might identify that we're going to have a separate network for bicyclists, we're going to have a separate network for equestrians. This plan in no way recommends that a multi-purpose trail be the solution. But we need to go through the study and the analysis to identify what would be the appropriate mechanism for incorporating all different types of riders, in our parks today.
Well, I've been a huge advocate for bicycling. I believe I introduced the motion to support 10% allocation of the dollars for bicycling. I believe it's a tremendous avenue to improve our traffic congestion and underutilized solutions to our traffic problems. But, I just think we may be moving too quickly when it comes to horses and bicycling issues that may merge. So, given that my district has a high number of horses and equestrian trails, I need to express my sensitivity to that issue.
And I, as well, obviously, I have a lot of folks who are riding horses in my district, and we're all concerned about it. But the good point is this will flesh that stuff out in that study. I know Mr. Krikorian wants to speak, Mr. Labange, and Mr. Koretz. Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. Let me say first that I think one of the first public policy issues I ever cared about that got me interested in going into government was increasing access for bicyclists to bicycle paths when I was about 10 or 12 years old. And so I'm really excited about the great work that's been done in this, and I think that as we move forward with this, this really does have the potential to put Los Angeles on the global map as being a real visionary leader in bicycle safety and bicycle access and bicycling as a transportation means. And so I'm very supportive of the report. I do want to piggyback a little bit on Mr. Alarcon's concerns and actually state them a little bit more strongly, because I've actually had constituents who've come to me whose lives have been endangered by mountain bikes on the same trails as they were when they were riding horseback. I talked to someone on Sunday whose horse literally went off the trail and started to go down a cliff because of a mountain biker that had gone too close to the horse. I think that if the purpose of this report is to consider joint use of trails, I'm not going to be able to be supportive of that. I think that if there's going to be any studying, the studying has to be how to segregate bicyclists from equestrians and hikers in the use of park trails. Otherwise, I don't see a way to move forward in a safe fashion that can accommodate both equestrian concerns and pedestrians, but especially equestrians, along with mountain bikers. It's just the nature of the beast. Mountain bikes move very fast. Horses, get startled by fast-moving things. It's just not the sort of thing that can be done, in my view, in a safe way. The second concern is mountain bikers cause significant rutting of trails. there's an actual degradation of the quality of the trails, which is in itself both a safety concern for horses and also a maintenance cost and concern that we have to deal with. So for those reasons, what I would like to suggest is that if there's support for this idea, perhaps we can set Section 3.3 aside for further consideration and input and proceed with everything else in the plan. Segregate those sections out for further consideration and possible further revision. I'm sure I am. I'm afraid to turn around and see their facial expressions. And I'm going to guess that there's probably not support for that, but I would like to at least throw that out for discussion. If that's not going to be a possibility, then I think as we move forward with it, we do need to have a dialogue about what would be the purpose of any such studies. Because if the purpose of the studies is to present as a policy option joint use of trails, then I'm not going to be supportive of that.
But perhaps there's an approach where we could speak to, as resources avail themselves, and we look at the various areas of priority where incidents are occurring, we have high levels of incidents, those become priority areas for the kind of analysis you're seeking. It can come as an amendment to the plan once it's in place, and hopefully do it on a parallel track, but just food for thought. I mean, it's another approach to get to the same point.
I would just want to say, too, that any approval must be, and it should be in this report, in 333 if you're going to keep it, must be approved by the Board of Recreational Parks Commission, the Planning Department. Have you met with Mike Sherrill?
Yes, we have.
What did Mike think about this?
The Rec and Parks Department sent us a letter in favor of leaving this language in there. They've read this language. This language is consistent with their policies. I mean, this does not in any way supersede their authority. We have language in the plan.
But I'd like to see.
We have language in the plan that states that. I also just wanted to reiterate that the programs that are in here today, I think, are actually getting at some of the concerns that Councilman Krikorian had in terms of looking at ways to, to resolve conflict. One of the one of the other programs is the Park Trail Inventory. Specifically says identify a subset of trails with no existing equestrian use that may potentially be suitable for mountain biking based on trail width, grade, and existing user counts. I could go on through all the programs. There's nothing in here that talks about joint use. It talks about really looking at doing analysis.
Right, from your analysis as a very good planner, could you exempt all of Griffith Park from your study? Just let me ask that. And then you may have some other parks in your district. Right now, there's Sunset Ranch.
When you say
exempt from, right now, could you conceive any use in Griffith Park for off-road bikes and equestrians that coexist? And I don't know if you have enough knowledge of Griffith Park, or the existing stables that are not only just in the city of Los Angeles and North Atwater, but our adjacent cities of Glendale and Burbank, and also in Hollywood, the Sunset Ranch.
Councilmember LaBonte, I'm sure you're very aware that we've had a long-standing discussion of this with the mountain bike community, the equestrian and hiking community over the years. At one point, we had a trail designer in representing the Concerned Off-Road Bicycling Association, and he actually told us that Griffith Park was not an ideal use for mountain bikes because...
So could you say that?
I'm sorry?
Could you say that? Could the planning department say that? That lays a lot of fears for people. There may be certain parks that have high number of horses, and even planners who worked in this building before all of us. There used to be stables west of the Los Angeles River, not just the freeway, but fires took out. There's an old Marshall guy. He'll tell you there were the stables on Riverside Drive that let horses left certain areas of the city. Compton used to have a lot of horses. I don't know if it still does. I remember going down with John Farrell to Compton, and a big SC guy there. I know that, but there was horses in Compton. I want to give Compton a little love. Anyway, I'm just saying we got to identify where the horses live, and if it's in proximity, we want to keep the horses, the opportunity there, but also find that. And in Griffith Park, let's say right now, since 1992, the upper roads, which are paved, have been closed. So if you're a commuter in the San Fernando Valley, you could come through the Victory Boulevard. You could ride over what we call the roads, no problem. And there's intersections of the equestrians. At those points, equestrians are aware that bikes may come through the road, so they're aware of that. And I'd love to show you that. So the only thing I'd want to say in this, because I do love study, and I do love each and every one of you for what you've done, and all the people who've had this energy to get here, okay? But at the same time, I want to preserve equestrians and make them. I've been in the park many times when there's been accidents. I've been in the park where some people do not ride or legally ride on the trail, and it's not just horses that they spook. Many of our senior citizens, especially our ethnic populations, walk, and all of a sudden a bike darts through. So I think there's a way to do it, but I want to make sure we preserve the horse in a way that works. And I think that's the issue, especially in the K districts, because I think this should reflect that, where there's a high number that live there. Not necessarily that horses that are trucked to Hollywood Hills, that's far, away. Anyway, I think we got to figure the word out, because I want to support the Los Angeles County Bike Coalition that did so much work, and I want to especially support the equestrian that want to preserve what they've had.
Thank you, Councilman Levin. Councilman Curtis.
I don't know if I'm missing something, but this discussion seems to be going in the exact opposite direction of what seems common sense to me. People are saying, oh my God, there's mountain bikes, they're scaring horses, they're almost falling off cliffs, we're having lots of accidents. So let's just ignore the fact that they're there and take mountain bikes out of the plan and pretend they're not there. And somehow this sounds like a positive for the riders of both horses and bicycles. I don't see it. What makes sense to me is to do some real planning. Do the study, analyze where the biggest problems are and what the best opportunities are, and figure out a way to make this work for both pieces of the system. We don't have the ability to police all these trails, and we have fewer and fewer resources all the time. So if we provide no opportunities for mountain bikers, they're just going to find the best opportunity they can find, whether it's legal or illegal. If we actually plan this and give them some opportunities, we can intelligently find places for them, pick the ones that conflict the least with the horses and make the most sense. So on this one, I'd say, let's stop horsing around and start planning.
You did that thing the other day, Paul, with football.
And on a completely different topic, in my district, which just got mentioned in passing, but I think it's important, the bicycle lane near the Expo line. This is an area where particularly you have a lot of very unhappy homeowners. The Expo piece of it, all the neighbors of the immediate neighbors of the Expo all feel that they were just run over, no pun this time intended, and ignored, and the Expo did what it wanted, didn't listen to them at all. And now you have the bike lane and the perception that the same thing is going to happen. Now, I know we don't have the funding right now. I know the plan is to wait years down the road till we have the funding. I think this is a landmine that you can spot 100 miles away. So I would ask that rather than waiting till we have the funding, doesn't have to be today, doesn't have to be next week, but earlier than the absolute moment that we could start, when we'd start talking to the neighbors, they'd be unhappy, we'd wind up with lawsuits. You can see this coming a mile away. Start before we actually have the funding, so we do this in a timely fashion, we get all their issues worked out, and the timing is such that it doesn't delay the bicycle lane by 6 months or a year, because we started on the schedule that we're currently planning on starting.
Councilman, I really believe that we are being offered by the staff an approach, a methodology that speaks to how we look at not only current trails and bike paths, but new ones. So we can start creating a sense of predictability in terms of what is the best pathway for the different types of riderships. So we are inclusive. And correct me if I'm wrong, staff, but isn't that what you're proposing in your report? To have the ability to understand the role of each trail, to be able to assess each trail, to understand all the different unique characteristics of each trail so that we can start making decisions with all the stakeholders that are impacted by each trail. Isn't that what you're offering?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just asking that we do it sooner than staff is currently envisioning,
Right.
so we don't we don't wind up delaying
But
that
the truth is-
particular project.
I mean, and looking how this universe operates, it's going to depend on how each council member pushes each trail in their respective district, how we get the resources to do each study, and all that to be incumbent upon us. But I think they're giving us the toolbox to do it with.
Absolutely.
Am I stating that accurately?
You're absolutely correct, and I did want to note, just for the record, that we have just gotten authority to proceed with a new environmental process on the segment that is in question, and we will be reaching out to the homeowners as a part of that environmental process.
So we're creating a toolbox right now.
As soon as, and as extensively as we can.
Right.
Because, I mean, I don't need to say it again, this is the landmine that you can spot, and there's no reason not to start working with the neighbors as early as possible to resolve it.
Councilmember? Okay.
Yeah, I've been around this building a long time, and I did not appreciate the insensitivity to a very large constituency, not just in my district, but the entire city of Los Angeles. Whether you're in Chatsworth, whether you're on the west side, whether you're in Lakeview Terrace or Sylmar, Sunland, Tahunga, Sun Valley, there are equestrian communities all over the city.
Of course.
So I don't like the comment about horsing around. There were just as many people, there have been people, and you've seen them because we've been in the same committee meetings, who treat the bicyclist community the same way. So let's not lower the discussion to them or us. The question is how we can make them all work together. I appreciate the planning staff's response to my inquiries, but I need to express those things so that this committee and the council as a whole understands that it's a very serious issue. We're talking about people who get injured and frankly, fighting that occurs in my community. And there's a lot of other issues that are related to this. Cultural issues that are very serious. This is not a joke, and I don't like to make a joke about it. And you know I like to make jokes. I just made one. But I just, if you don't have a lot of horses in your district, and I have thousands, then I'm going to educate you about horses.
Mr. Chair, if I could respond to that. My point is exactly the point that you made, which is these things are going on now. So if we have a plan that says, all right, we're going to take all our addressing of the conflict out of the plan and ignore it, that's not the way this is going to get resolved. So by doing what...
My comment was about the insensitive nature of your comments. That's all.
Okay, what I'd like to do is, I have two persons on my time, if I may, colleagues, if you can please bear with me. I'm going to start a new by Ann Wallman. Before we conclude the discussion, they came here to speak on this item, and for whatever reason, it didn't come up on the cards, but I want to make sure I acknowledge them. And 1 minute, please, Ms. Neubauer.
Thank you. Sally Neubauer, I'm Assistant President of the Citizens Committee to Save Elysian Park. And while you've been discussing bicyclists all this time, you have mentioned horses and horses and horses. I want to keep reminding you that pedestrians are an issue here too. Moms and their dogs and their children are an issue here too. We don't have horses in Elysian, but we have lots of the others. And 10 years ago, a study was done specifically for Elysian because it had wide fire trails, and you mentioned something about looking at the wide trails. Well, the study concluded that bicyclists and people and horses and moms and dogs did not coexist together. And it even references this study on on the appendix, chapter 3, page 13, and it says specific language that it was not found feasible. Again, these people were asked to comment on 2010 to see if common ground could be identified. It couldn't. So I ask you to please delete sections 3.3 and sections 3.4 of this plan and go forward. If you must insist on studying it, it has to be new trails, not existing trails.
Thank you very much. Ms. Warman?
I'm Ann Walnum, 755 Crane Boulevard in Mount Washington. I'm a member of the Debs Park Advisory Board and the Arroyo Seco Neighborhood Council. Both groups have passed a resolution asking that the sections regarding the study on feasibility of mountain biking on dirt trails be removed, inasmuch as budget crisis can use the money for that study much better elsewhere. I personally would like to see money used to add to the number of trails that are not controversial. I really feel concerned for the safety of cyclists. I would like to see them more safe by being separated from vehicle traffic. I would also like to see vehicles follow the speed limit and increase the safety of cyclists. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Waldman. So colleagues, there are some directives that I'd like to put forth for the planning department if we finish discussion. If not, we have more discussion. Let's just continue. But I do have some directives that we need to move forward so that we can have a full policy statement for the council's review after it leaves committee. But if there's anything else that you'd like to add or like to open up, otherwise we can start the directive and take the vote at item 1. We can move to item number 2. Any other, anything else we'd like to add, colleagues? If not, Councilman? He's going to get Paul a horse.
I've known Paul Kretz for 20 years, and I think if anybody's Mr. Sensitivity, it's Paul Kretz. So there'd be no issue of Mr. Kretz being insensitive to anyone. But I do think that this is of grave concern to many of us, this issue of conflict on trails, and the fact that this is going on now in violation of the law, which prohibits mountain biking in city parks, doesn't make me feel compelled to figure out a way to accommodate the lawbreakers to make it easier for them to ride. So I guess that sums up my concern, and I appreciate the fact that some of the study recommended in here is for segregated trails and finding an inventory of separated trails and so on, but not all of it is. And, we're talking about data collection on comparing user counts to shared use trails in other urban areas. Section B, analysis of shared trail use in other urban areas. Section A, mountain trail conflict resolution analysis. There's only conflict resolution analysis necessary where there's conflict, and that's where there's shared use. So, both because of the availability of resources to study, and also the fact that we are, in fact, studying shared use, that gives me a great deal of discomfort. And if we could defer those issues, and maybe it is a matter, Mr. Reyes, as you talked about, of prioritization. Maybe what we ought to prioritize is enforcement of the current law, which is one of the things that's provided in here, increase the presence of LAPD officers, well, that's on bicycle paths. But in any event, enforce the current law, figure out whether there is segregated trail opportunities, and defer the part about shared use. I think that would, those of us who are representing equestrian communities, I think would take greater comfort in that.
Right. Again, and I'd like to have staff respond to the council members' observations and assertions, but from what I understand is that what's in front of us is creating the toolbox, the analytical framework by which we can start achieving the goals and address the concerns you are stating. And that by passing this, we begin to go through that itemization of priorities and start breaking down based on funding, based on stakeholder development, stake on community input, how we start literally achieve these goals as stated by the general plan. But staff, can you please respond to Councilman Krikorian's observations and assertions on that?
Well, I'll start, and Clara and Michelle can jump in as well. First of all, we would just, I think, remind the council members that the studies, the data collection, the analysis that is in this plan goes much less far than the provisions that had been in previous versions of this plan, the versions that were adopted in 1996, 2002, readopted 2007, which had called for actually identifying new trails that might have offered up some of those types of conflicts. And in fact, there was language specifically about Griffith Park, I believe, in those adopted versions of the plan. All of that language has been stripped out of this plan. I think certainly these suggestions about perhaps tweaking some of the language to focus or prioritize the types of analysis that's prepared is welcome. And I think staff, however, I think is concerned about a proposal to, I think, as Mr. Corrett said, have all the language stripped out altogether and hope that the problem will go away. I think that there is a need for some continued study and analysis, and I think the discussion here is healthy in terms of how that analysis gets prioritized and what types of data should be collected.
Saying that, what I would like to see happen is before it comes to council, that what both Mr. Krikorian and Mr. Alarcon have said are put into the record and part of this process, because frankly, the equestrians are wondering, is this putting a toe under the tent that will actually mean that they will get up on the mountainsides and change the dynamic? That's where they're coming from. They're worried and they're suspicious that this is the beginning of the end of their opportunities that they've had. I want to make it clear that this is not the beginning of anything, that this is an analysis so we have the true facts in front of us. It does not mean we're going to share a lane here or share a path there. I am not there. What I would like to know is what are we dealing with, and to ignore it is not a professional strategy that we should have as a city. And so I say to everybody out there, if there's ever an effort to make this into something more than just an analysis of things, it has to come before the political process again, and we must put ourselves out, yes or no. We're nowhere in that process at this point. How long will it take you all to get a better understanding of what we're really talking about, other than what we're hearing here in the room?
Well, each of these are separate programs, and the lead on many of those programs is Recreation and Parks. Recreation and Parks does need to identify the funding and or staff resources to move forward with these. So we'll be collaborating with Rec and Parks staff.
Okay, before there's any kind of anything more, I want to report back, and I don't want to play funny names about things around here, but I ain't horsing around on this. And I think it's very clear to all of us, especially those, and I have a lot of equestrians in my district who really appreciate their opportunities there. I don't want to deny anybody anything, but I want to have a better understanding of the facts on the ground in these potential trails or non-trails or whatever, just so I know more what I'm talking about. And that's the point of this. We can't ignore something. We just have to face it and understand it. And then, if there's any thoughts by any colleague of mine here or on the council about anything more than that, they're going to have to go through a process that involves everybody in it, that makes people have to stand up and be counted on it or not be standing up and counting on it.
Okay. So if I may, Chairman Reyes and Chairman Rosendahl, if the record of this proceeding can reflect the concerns that have been expressed about the equestrian conflict, right, in the report that then goes to council,
correct,
would it then also be a possibility that between now and council we might consider, as staff indicated, some of the tweaking of some of the language in here to try to find some greater assurance for the equestrian community?
Yes.
So we would be able to do that between now and council?
I would hope so, yes. But remember, in the general sense of where we're going, I want to get this 5-year plan out there so we can actually start doing the cycling business in my lifetime.
I agree with that as well. Now, we might also then be able to entertain motions at the time of council that would state that it is the intention of the council to preserve separation of equestrians, and I mean, and hypothetically speaking, we could do that in order to provide greater assurance to the equestrian
Well, my wish for
community.
thinking would be that the type of language you'd like to see could be reviewed by staff.
Yes, of course.
Before, so that it's in front of us, we can vote on a plan that we can get out in the open. I'd like to make these directives. You have one more?
Just one more. Try to solve this here, and if if we could, as a committee, I'd like to get unanimous out of this, that in this study, the Department of Planning and the Department of Recreation and Parks review the needs of the existing equestrian trails so that they can be preserved and that new opportunities can be identified for bicycles in other areas. I'm going to type this up and circulate it. I think this gets us out. There's 99% of the people in this room are all in agreement. There's this 1% issue that is stalled us. I heard that from some of the people who are here today. I think this gets us through. Let me look at the planning department. Could they smile on this one here? Yeah. Okay, all right, okay.
Okay, so the formal directives, as a result of this discussion, we have several observations, assertions we made, some amendments. Councilmember?
I just need to ask staff, where exactly would the intent language be that Mr. Krikorian and I are talking about?
333.
Well, I think the intent language, as I understood, the councilman was suggesting that be part of the committee report, that would...
Okay, then I'm talking about the plan. Where would that language be embellished?
Well, I think what was suggested is that we look at some tweaking of the language in conjunction with the intent.
That's what he suggested. What I'm suggesting is we incorporate it into the plan.
Oh, okay.
Where would that be?
In section 3.3.4.
No, it's in 3.5 and 3.3.6.
I'm sorry, can you speak into the mic, please?
The two sections on the equestrian paths are actually now 3.3.5 and 3.3.6.
What page?
Oh, I'm sorry. It starts on page 103 of chapter 4.
That little section there? That's got about 100 words.
That's it.
And that, I just don't think that captures the spirit of the concern that we've been raising here.
Well, there's a section in chapter 3 that discusses the issue in more length, where we describe the responsibility with the Rec and Parks Department. So on page 66 of chapter 3, there's a 2-page or a page-and-a-half description.
Where is it?
On page 66, chapter 3.
Page 66.
Which?
Page 66, chapter 3?
That's correct.
I'm looking at it, but where is it?
So under trails,
Trails?
there's a couple of paragraphs there that describe the past, as well as some of the existing trails that are on other agency facilities, as well as describes the responsibility for making any decision to allow for mountain bicycling, what it would lay with the Rec and Parks Department.
Okay. Okay, let me, one line says, as part of the public participation process for the 2010 plan, additional meetings that included representatives of mountain bicyclists, hiker, and equestrian groups were held to determine, if, yet again, if common ground could be identified. I mean, that doesn't really capture the spirit of what we're talking about here.
That statement actually describes a process that was included in a part of this to bring the three communities together to discuss whether or not there was a potential to
Well,
improve.
I want specific language in the plan, not in some report, but in the plan that addresses the concern that Mr. Krikorian and I have expressed about a concern for and sensitivity to existing equestrian uses.
And Mr. Alarcon, it was my suggestion that we would do exactly that between now and council, rather than trying to wordsmith it right now.
No,
with
I'm not
staff.
trying to wordsmith
So,
it.
but
They were-
it was my intention to include our concerns in the committee report, and then between now and council, for us to actually prepare language that would go in what would be voted upon by the city council
That's how I understood
to
that.
give the greater assurance that
I
we're
understand that,
talking
but
about.
staff didn't, because when I asked
Okay.
them that, they said it was going to be in the report, but they didn't say it would get into the plan.
Well, let's make it very clear.
Yeah, I think
I want to be very clear that
you're asking for a paragraph, like in this particular section, that articulates that the goal of the interest in keeping the different uses separated. We want to go ahead and study this, but
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Describe to me.
What I'm saying is, we need to express our extreme sensitivity to the reality of equestrian and bicycle conflict, and the potential for that. Because the concern I have is that this is our plan.
Right.
We're going to be getting money on the basis of this plan.
Right.
And so it's not as if this is a study that comes back and the funding agencies will look at this as if we've already approved this as a policy document, which is exactly what we're doing. I want it to be clear in the document that we do have some trepidation about moving forward with creating potential conflicts of equestrian and bicycling.
Can we do this, Councilman Alcon, given what you just said?
So I'll work with them. I'll work
Your
with staff.
emphasis, and we will work with you, and we'll get there. We will get there. Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Just want to respond to Mr. Labange's suggestion. I think we're all thinking in the same direction. I think what he suggested goes too far. I mean, there may be trails that have little or no equestrian use that are, based on their width, et cetera, might be better suited for mountain biking. So I don't know that it only has to be new trails. I think there are a lot of potential combinations to make this work. I think the bottom line for all of us is we don't want to see a narrow trail and see horses and mountain bikes trying to pass each other. And I don't see any way, regardless of what the best practices are in other places, that we're trying to make that happen. I think we all agree, even myself, who I acknowledge we have a lot of horses in my district, I may have the least knowledge about it, but nobody wants to see horses and bikes fighting over a narrow trail. So I think we can clearly express. We can clearly express that.
Wait a minute, I've been around this building a long time, Mr. Koretz.
I'm chair of one committee, and I just want to make a comment. All I want to know are the facts. And if this analysis gives us facts that we then decide among ourselves what makes sense, we will do that. But this is not an action item as far as I'm concerned. And frankly, I like to work on a knowledge base, not on playing BS with anybody. I just want to know the facts. And so as I see this analysis going forward, it's for everybody here in the room, my colleagues who have different points of view, the communities that have different points of views. We just want to know what we're dealing with. That's what I want to know. I want to know what we're dealing with. And if anything more than that is what is being proposed in here, I'm against it.
All right, so let's do this. As Chair of the Plum Committee, I'd like to put forth the following action. And Councilman, what it does, it approves the general plan amendment and findings to the transportation element, updating the city's bicycle plan to designate 1,680 miles of bikeways, to create 3 new networks of bicycle facilities, Backbone, Neighborhood, and Green, which was presented, introduce bicycle-friendly streets, and create a 5-year implementation strategy that updates goals, objectives, policies, and programs, and create a technical design handbook to guide the design of bicycle facilities. So these 4 actions covers the presentation on item 1, and it would include the amendments as indicated by yourself, as proposed by yourself and Councilman Alarcon, to look at the whole dynamic of how do we create safer pathways, trails for both equestrian and bicyclists.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. The committee's report should reflect that I will object to any study of shared use of the trails. I'd like that to be explicitly stated, and then as far as how we implement that, or whether the council agrees with me on implementing that, we will do that between now and council. Thank you very much. With that, I'll be happy to second it.
Okay, so that's...
Corey, before you leave, when we do option 2, which is to get the plan going forward, we need your vote on it, because that's 2 members of Plum, and then there's 3 members of Transportation. My goal in this hearing is to move forward with that 5-year plan. Is it necessary, anybody here know, that he be here for that?
The 5-year implementation plan actually is a note and file item. It's a report to council.
So we don't need a vote from anybody on this point on that?
I don't believe so.
How about for item number 2?
On item 2, correct.
We do need your vote for
On item
number
1.
2.
Right.
Okay.
What did you just say about item 2?
Item 2 is the report from staff on the 5-year implementation plan, but it is to be noted and filed. It is not.
So what's the vote we need from him at this point? Any vote at all?
We're still on item 1, which is...
So you need a vote on item 1?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to do.
Let's get the
The
vote.
action was seconded by Councilman Krikorian.
Right.
That's the action of the Plum Committee.
So moved from Transportation as well.
So that's item number 1.
Okay, item number 1 has been moved.
Before you move on,
There's also a proposal to address the bike segmentation from Washington Boulevard to the Marina. Did you want to include that as recommended by Mr. Alarcon as part of this report?
No.
No.
There was no second.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next item.
Not next item, I just wanted to put this on the record. Just
Well,
so.
item number one?
One, yeah, in this study, the Department of Recreation and Parks, the Department of Planning, review the needs of the existing equestrian trails so that they can be preserved, and that new opportunities can be identified for bicycles that do not include shared trails, as Mr. Corretz objected to, but be used by bicycles. And that any approval will then be given by Recreation and Parks. I'll type it up and circulate it.
That'd be great, thank you.
So is there a second for that?
It's not a second, you don't need it, I'm just submitting it.
Oh, you want that?
Yeah, like you submitted yours. Did we say a second all your stuff?
It's a directive. Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I did get it.
You get it, what, am I gonna get a second from anybody for this? Mr. Rosendahl?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to second this?
Well, if it's necessary, is it necessary?
Well, I think so. It gives the planning department some direction to add it into the report. Yeah. Yeah, Mr. City Attorney, can I just submit this and say add it? Or do I need a second?
You need to say.
I need a second?
Yeah.
Okay, would you second it for me? Do I have a second here? Mr. Rosendahl?
No.
No second. Mr. Corretz?
Could you read the wording again?
In the study, the Department of Planning and the Department of Recreation and Parks review the needs of the existing equestrian trails so they can be preserved, and that new opportunities be identified by both departments for that, so that bicycles that do not include shared trails can be identified for future use by bicycles. You don't like shared trails?
Too restrictive for me.
Too restricted, all
The
right.
part especially.
The what part?
The part about it only being new opportunities.
All right, well, here's the thing that I want to say, Mr. Reyes. This is all a bunch of horse manure if we don't have the park commission here. So this is a fraud on the issue of horses on trails, because you don't have permission to dictate what goes on trails. So how do we go forward? I want to preserve the bicycle's intent to be able to get it done. So many good things in this trail.
Those are, again, I know we've been here all day, council now, and my fuse is a little short here, but the fact is, what we are creating is a toolbox, an analytical set of different rules, regulations, observations, conditions, tasks, data, so that we can get to where you want to be. That's all this is doing.
I don't want to be, I want to solve
Okay,
the problem.
well, that's what it takes to solve a problem, otherwise we never will. So this gets us to that point, and I'm just trying to be as blunt as possible.
I got it, but I had a kind of a little agreement between parties that we could do this here.
Well, process is process, and I did get a second, we couldn't get a second, so
I
we
got
move
it.
on.
I already
Okay.
got mine typed.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's item number one, so item number two, Roberto, on planning? Item number two. For the record.
Yes, again, Ken Bernstein with the Department of City Planning. The item number two is the presentation on the 5-year implementation strategy. We're trying to get the PowerPoint up. Is that? There it is. Thank you. Okay. So obviously, this accompanies the approval of the plan, but this is a note and file item, and in conjunction with the adoption of the plan, in order to provide greater certainty and sense of direction on the implementation. When we've heard the message that we heard today over and over again, that a plan is great, we've had plans in the past, how do we have some certainty of what we're going to be moving forward? We're going to be accelerating the timetable on this implementation. We have worked with LADOT, the community, and others to put together a first 5-year implementation strategy. This has also included input from the community and city council offices as we proceeded. So the hallmark of the 5-year implementation strategy, this is enshrined, first of all, within the plan as policy 1.1.2C of the bicycle plan, is that we will be prioritizing at least 200 miles of new bicycle facilities every 5 years through 2045. This is a 35-year implementation strategy. The focus of these improvements will be on two of the three networks that we discussed earlier, the backbone network on those major arterials, and then the neighborhood improvements on the neighborhood network. The purpose of the implementation plan is to begin sequentially building out this connected system that we spoke about earlier.
Mr. President, in 3 seconds, we're going to lose quorum here. Items 2 and 3, they're not action items, they're note and file?
Correct. Item 3 is a motion that, which is actually incorporated in terms of our reporting back in the implementation and the plan itself.
We can move this forward to the full council.
We can.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So,
From our committee.
Okay.
Because our 3 in the transportation are here for that.
Okay.
so we don't have a quorum on Plum and/or transportation now?
We have a quorum.
We have a quorum,
We
okay.
just acted unanimously for that.
Okay. And we do have quite a few cards on item number 2, so we should just run through the public hearing. So, okay? Sure. All right, so Lynn Brown, are you still here? Lynn Brown, like to come on up? Moore Rise?
Just 1 second. The note and file, do I need Mr. Alarcon here for that, for this item 2, transportation?
Right, you're
Yes.
not making it.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't need.
Okay.
We don't, okay, thank you. Lynn Brown?
No.
Lynn Brown, then Moore Rise, then Allison Manos.
Okay, Lynn Brown again. I'm totally confused at this point. I have to say that again, that there's an ordinance against bikes on trails. And by including the sections that we're talking about, you're encouraging bikes to continue the activities on park trails, and the city becomes a party to that activity. And the legal research has already been done and is in place to move forward if necessary. Mandeville Canyon, first of all, mountain bikers have 1,500 miles of trail. We seek to preserve the 100 miles of trail. This is not strictly in a question. Is anybody listening? I don't think anybody's listening. Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Okay, I lost my time here waiting for someone's attention.
We can listen and
The
do-
mountain bikers have 1,500 miles of trail. We're seeking to preserve 100 miles of trail. It's not simply an equestrian issue. Hikers also don't wish to be run over. I would also want to know who is going to do the studies, because my concern in the past, I've worked all over the state of California. I can tell you right now that conflict resolution is almost non-existent. The only conflict resolution is separate trails. But also, my concern is that the people who would be providing all this data about these wonderful places where everything works perfectly and we all hold hands and sing Kumbaya will be provided by the IMBA Association. And I would like to know who on earth, who else will be able to provide evidence on that.
Thank
There
you,
is
Ms.
no
Hall.
conflict resolution as far as I know. One more quick thing. In San Francisco, Golden Gate Park, mountain bikes are not allowed in the park.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
On
Thank you very
Mount
much.
Tamalpais, they lost a resolution in there
Thank you
as
very
well.
much. Moore Rise?
Hi, my name is Maura Reese, and I live in North Catalina Street in Koreatown, and I am one of the 27,000 daily commuters. Yay! But 5 years ago, I wasn't. I drove all of my trips. And what changed it for me was that I lived in Echo Park at the time, and I changed my job from UCLA to Children's Hospital, and I started using the bike lane. And because of that, I went from an occasional bike rider to a daily bike rider. I bike to work, bike to groceries. I've got great saddlebags on my bike. I bike to theater, movies, everywhere. And I wanted to come up and talk during the implementation part because I want to make sure that we really start moving forward, because there could be thousands of me out there. And right now, I drive my car 2,500 miles less a year. That's air you get to breathe. And I really wanted to, sorry, I get choked up. Today's my 40th birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Hey, happy birthday. I couldn't think of any better way to spend it than encouraging more bike lanes, so thank you.
Very good.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll get a nice gift for you by passing this. Allison? Vamos.
Hi, just a quick comment on the 5-year plan. I want to stress that this is a very important document. At LACBC, we're so happy that this has been created by planning, because this is where, literally the road hits the rubber. We're going to actually see all of the cyclists in the low-income areas and all of the potential cyclists, like the previous speaker, finally be addressed and getting tangible bike lanes on the ground. And so I think it's an awesome document, and it's going to help us actually move forward, which the previous plan draft didn't have any timelines in. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your hard work. Alexis? Thank you for your patience.
Hi, Alexis Lance, Los Angeles County Bicycle Coalition. I'm going to reiterate a little bit of what Allison said. We support the 5-year implementation plans and strategy, as it shows a solid strategy based on identifying the needs, gaps, and creating a complete network as outlined in the plan. It will ensure this plan that has taken years to develop does not end up sitting on a shelf. In years past, we have seen little to no bikeways implemented, and this plan outlines over 260 miles within the first 5 years that the city will commit to implementing, and hopefully we'll move forward past that in the years to come. But we need your leadership to help implement many of these projects, and I know that this is not a voting item today, but I hope to work with all of you to make sure that we implement these roadways that are identified in the 5-year implementation plan.
Thank you. Jeff Chakaber? Jacobberger, yes. There you go.
Jeff Jacobberger, I'm the chair of the Mid-City West Community Council and Councilmember Wesson's appointee to the LA Bicycle Advisory Committee. I want to thank staff for all their hard work on the plan, but now the really hard work of implementation begins. I think staff has commented about the tough choices that we face about how we allocate roadway width among various users. And my concern is, we're not off to a good start. I think the plan talks about Wilshire Boulevard as being, in phase 1. And what's council doing is taking away the bus and bike lane that would allow Councilmember Koretz's daughter to ride her bike to UCLA, that would allow people to get to the far west side. And, in the part of Los Angeles that I live in, the south part of the Miracle Mile. I ride through the older parts of LA. We don't have places to add bike lanes without taking roadway width away from automobile users. And I, for one, am tired of being, as I ride my bike around the town all the time, people are screaming at me like, fucking faggot, get off the road. And this fucking faggot would love to get off the road, but the only way that's going to be able to happen is if you guys have the political will to create bike lanes on the roads of Los Angeles so we can ride safely.
Thank you. I want to comment on 2 levels. One, as an openly gay man, I appreciate your anger and frustration when those phrases are used in public against us, and it continues to be done, no matter who we are and what level of interaction a person has with us. But secondly, the issue of getting those bike lanes going. When that incident happened on Mandeville Canyon, that's when I put in the Bicycle Bill of Rights. That's when I learned more about the rights of cyclists that have been totally dished in this great region here. That is why I brought Charlie Beck into the room, and we had a series of meetings with the police that have left us in a much better position, thanks to Charlie Beck and his command, with cyclists. Secondly, that's why I put in that 3-foot rule there for dooring and the other issues. And third, the ability to allow you to have lawyers to deal with issues when you have issues. I totally am with you 100%. And the whole point of today, frankly, is to accelerate a bike plan. I am getting too old to talk about things anymore. I want action. And we are a big city that should have bicycle lanes and have had them by now. We saw the graft earlier on about what was talked about 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. And I must say that the leadership of the city here is totally committed to the bicycles. Mr. Labange travels all over the planet in his sister cities, and he sees those bike lanes productively happening all over the world and brings that energy always back. Mr. Reyes has been a huge proponent of it, and now myself and Mr. Koretz are new members of this group, see it as a no-brainer. I personally, frankly, would like to get on a cycle. One problem is I got to lose some more weight and get my act together better, and then, frankly, the second is I've been fearful of going on on the road, because a cyclist is not given that dignity, respect, in terms of it is like a car. You could go and sit right in the middle of the lane, and if they don't like it, it's their problem. So I totally appreciate your frustration, but I do want you to know this is a great moment in the city that we are going to move forward. We're going to have a 5-year plan, and now with Measure R, I fought very hard so that we would have 10% for pedestrians and cyclists, and we do have access to money that we've never had before, as others would say their frustration was the lack of the resources dedicated. So we have dedicated resources. We have a plan that's in place. It's not perfect, and we need to do other things as time goes on, but I don't want to jeopardize the timetable of moving forward so we can start having what we need to have so that your expression doesn't ever happen again, and I certainly don't want to ever hear it again myself personally, but thank you for getting up. Sorry for that interruption.
Okay, we have Glenn Bailey, Mary Kaufman, and Melanie Cotto. Like to come on up? Yes. Go ahead.
I already spoke.
Okay, you already spoke then. You
Yes,
filled out a card for two, but if you're done, that's fine. Thank you very much. Glenn Bailey, you also signed up for number 2, then Mary Kaufman.
5-year implementation plan really shouldn't just be received and filed. You should pay a lot of attention to it, because it's deciding what is your number 1 priority, and number 2 priorities in terms of what's going to actually be put on the ground, just like you just said.
Right.
You know, I've been doing this for a while now, and I'd really like to spend more time riding my bike on the streets safely than coming to City Hall, with all due respect. So, but anyway, we started this off with the bike plan implementation team meeting earlier this month, and that's a good first step in the process. But I think it's incumbent upon each council district to review those, give input, because frankly, some of these projects that you see on the list, and there was, 11 pages there, will move up faster if there's support from your office saying you want it in these areas, you want these connections. In addition to which, we need to look at existing transit hubs, existing demand needs, transit-dependent areas, et cetera, as we make these decisions, because as you know, there's only so much that can be done at a time. So I think more attention needs to be paid to this than just received and filed. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Mary Kaufman?
Hi, I'm still Mary Kaufman. I'm still from Chatsworth. I did want to say that the Equestrian Committee does support the plan going forward and such. It's just that the part with regards to the mountain bikers is not, we feel, part of transportation. It's more part of recreation. And we have had problems in Chatsworth Park South with regards to it. Even if the park isn't open anymore, the mountain bikers are still in there building jumps and causing problems in there.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman, you have a list that you want to call?
Yep, we have a few more cards left
Madam
of folks who haven't done it, who might have spoken or have left. John, and I can't make out the spelling of the last name, on Manitoba Street, are you here? Apartment 207? Not. Sally Neubauer? Sally Neubauer?
Oh, she's gone.
Ann Wallen?
Ann Wallen, she's gone.
Ann Wallen? Carmen Segura?
Carmen Segura.
Alex Thompson. I know Alex. Where's Alex? There he is.
Is Carmen Segura's here?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I just say.
I apologize
what
for my
always say.
pronunciation.
Okay, hi. My name is Carmen, and I really like you guys hear everybody, because we are all family, and everybody has a family. Everybody has to understand that we all need all these things for all the people. And I want to say, please do it, and for all the people.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Alex Thompson and John, is it Rizzo?
Alex Thompson.
Alex Thompson's the last speaker, unless there's somebody else that his card hasn't come up.
I'll close down.
You're up.
President of Bikeside LA, happy birthday. I just want to say on the 5-year implementation strategy, props to Claire Bowen. This was her idea, and I think it does a great job of adding some clarity to what the department's goals are, and without it, we'd be lost. Now that we have this strategy in hand, I think we need to start beefing up our plans in other areas. This is a plan for engineering and infrastructure, but education and enforcement are really important, particularly education, and we need to start scheduling education programs where infrastructure can be dicey because it involves taking away space in some instances from motorists. Education doesn't really hurt anybody, so it doesn't require as much political will, and it's the kind of thing we can get done pretty quickly. And then my last comment is just to say, Jeff Jacobberger, who made the comment about the kinds of things that get shouted at you, that is routine. And I think you can sense in his voice both that it was very personal for him, but also that as a big guy, he feels fear. So everybody gets reduced to human size on a bike, and we really need to pay attention to that.
And I appreciate you saying that, because that's part of the car culture that has to change, and the cyclists have to be a legitimate and dignified appreciation by everybody out there.
I mean, it happens to pedestrians too. I got shouted at the other day when I was running, so.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your leadership on bicycling. You've done a great job on that. And Claire, just a shout out, that's the first time we've heard somebody say something nice about the preparation of lots of documents and stuff that we're doing here. So I want to thank you for the open process you've had, and obviously Michelle, who's been at it for many years, and Ken, the three of you, and Amir sitting in the seat there, and all the others in DOT. The combination of planning and transportation, Mr. Labange's energy constantly, that's positive for all this stuff, is what's moving it all forward. So I just want to thank everybody for that.
I would say thank you, but I also just wanted to thank the bicycle community, Alex and the folks in the LACBC and folks in the BAC. It's really, without this collaborative effort and spirit, we wouldn't be here today. I really want to give them a round of applause.
Right on, everybody.
I'd like to include, as we're here, Jill Sodier from my office.
Too, and everything else.
I do want to thank Jill Sodier from my office, who's been a strong advocate. So I'll look at that on Susan Wong, the planning, but
Paul Backstrom in my office.
Sure that they are acknowledged for their hard work. So in item 2, in conclusion, there will be a note filed with recommendations as part of the report, where we'll be directing the Department of City Planning and DOT to refine budget and scope for the next 5 years as project details evolve. 2, direct CAO to work with Department of City Planning and DOT and other city departments as necessary to review the preliminary budget and additional sources of funds over the next 5 years. And 3, we'll transmit this report to City Council as informational items. So those will be the directives as part of our action item number 2. On item number 1, I want to make sure that these technical amendments are included as stated by the staff. So the technical amendments are going along with item number 1.
Can I ask on item number 1, just since you opened it up again, that we direct the planning department to come up with language that would try to resolve the issue between equestrians and mountain bikes and park uses? Is that all right? Can I get a friendly amendment of that?
I'm sorry.
That the planning department come up with language that would satisfy the discussion for the equestrian uses, horses, mountain bikes, and this plan as we go forward, and the regulation. If that's, I just haven't seen. Oh, good.
That's a second.
Yeah, we seconded unanimous from the Transportation Committee.
Second.
Everybody's on the kumbaya on that one. Great.
Yes, sir.
So on 2, we also have direct the planning department. Okay, here we go. Direct the planning department and Department of Transportation to work with the CAO and any other relevant departments review the preliminary total budget of $27.7 million. A, Prop C, B, Local Measure R, which increased the county of LA sales tax to fund transportation projects. C, the following additional potential local sources of funding to address a funding shortfall that can range from 9.1 million and if only 200 miles are completed, or 12.7 million to complete all 353 miles. An additional 5 million may be needed for the environmental studies. And you go through a list of different products. This is item number 2. Right, in implementing the 5-year plan. Then I'm going to pull back that language and we'll stay with the general language that was offered. These are included in the report back?
That are in the report.
Okay.
So that they're going to report back with a CAO.
Okay, so that'll be part of the CAO report back. Okay, a lot of detail there. So item number 3, real quick, Roberto, so we can finish up this agenda. Okay. No, it's item number 3 then?
This motion is asking us to report back on a quarterly basis, and actually, we have a program already in the plan. No, it's not that. Well,
The BPIT requires us to report back to
right,
council.
so we actually have a number of places where we're doing reporting. The BPIT, the Bicycle Plan Implementation Team, is going to be reporting at least quarterly to the BAC and to the Transportation Committee. We also have another place in here where we're doing an annual report, which we'll find it somewhere. Oh, we have a bicycle plan, it's 3.2.4G. We have an annual bicycle plan implementation report, which requires us to come annually and to report to the Transportation Commission and City Planning Commission.
It's all in there.
So succinctly, we're just asking, we're putting instructions for Planning Department, Public Works, and Transportation to report on a quarterly basis relative to the 210 bicycle plan.
Yes, and we already have it in the plan.
Okay, and we have comment cards on that item.
Really?
Again, it's Glenn Bailey, Jeff Jacobager, Alexis Lant, Allison Manos, Alex Thompson, please come on up. And this is item number 3.
Glenn Bailey, for Councilmember Koretz's motion, the only thing I would add would be to include Los Angeles Police Department for these quarterly report backs.
Can we add that, LAPD, on those quarterly reports?
And
Okay.
while my clock's going, over a year ago, at the instigation of Chief Beck, there was established a LAPD bicycle task force that have been meeting regularly, and I've been part of that. And while there's a good airing of different issues and that sort of thing, I think that this council should get that update and have the opportunity for dialogue in a public setting too.
And that could be part of the quarterly reports as well, correct?
As you've got 3 departments listed here, I'm suggesting that we...
And we're adding that.
Okay.
It
For
also
quarterly
includes LAPD, Rec and
Okay,
Parks.
Okay.
Department.
Just so Councilmember Koretz knows as far as his motion.
Yes. Thank you, Councilman Perez. All right. Jeff Jacoberg, he left. Alexis Lant? Alexis?
Hi, thank you
Hi.
again. So I know much of this is outlined already in the plan, and we definitely support creating a more open process that creates accountability and transparency. Quarterly and yearly reporting will allow for the council and general public to be better informed about the 5-year implementation plan and the progress of the policies and programs outlined in the plan, such as the education and enforcement aspects. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Allison? And then Mr. Thompson, Alex Thompson.
I just want to concur with that. I think it's really nice that we have a way of the council staying abreast of issues that will come up during the implementation plan, and it creates stronger accountability. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. And Mr. Thompson, our final speaker.
Alex, Bikes LA, good idea, do it.
All right, great. Well, colleagues, I think that concludes all items. Any other comments or closing?
Just on this one, I just wanted to point out the main reason for this is just to keep it moving along and make sure we don't just have a plan, but it all gets implemented. And so we can keep nudging this along and actually see this exciting concept actually become a real set of workable bike paths and lanes.
Thank you, sir.
And I want to thank Mr. Ed Reyes. Ed is my seatmate, and we chit-chat, and we do serious things, and we also just share our lives together. And I think his leadership on Plum has been outstanding, and I think this joint relationship that brings us here today to actually move forward with, hopefully, we can get 200 miles of this done by your birthday in 5 years, and that we all can, when we can all be happy that we've moved in the right direction. But I also want to thank you, Ed, for your leadership.
Thank you for your compassion and making sure we're very inclusive.
Council members, as your final action, do you want to approve this motion, item 3?
Yes.
So moved.
Thank you.
All right, colleagues, this meeting is adjourned.
Great.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you very
And
much.
thank you, staff.
Well run, gentlemen. Except our colleagues. That's the